Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 209. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun, who's beaming into us today from a CIA black site in Romania. Chris, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm in Sweeney's room right now. So I'm trying to, my goal is to be in a completely different room every single episode from here on out until I die.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you, and I'm glad that you're well. You're on your different travels here. Doing mysterious things, and Sweeney's room. I mean, this is a little boring. For him.
Yeah, I agree.
What was the other room? That was like his living room or something, or is this
that was a friend of ours, his roommate's room.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a bed there. Okay, yeah. Cool. So yeah, this is a little more nondescript. He's keeping it low key. I appreciate that. I knew people like that when I lived with them back in the day. They had like nothing on the walls. They had like just a bed and a TV. Very workman-like.
Yeah,
you know?
He's got a portal back here that if I was 10 years old, I would assume was very frightening technology.
Oh my God. Nothing like that existed when I was 10, or we would have had a lot of fun trying to fit through that, breaking it, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media, joining us as always. How are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. Just settling back in. I mentioned my travels last week, and we'll talk about one of them in a few minutes, but I think I'm good for traveling for pretty much hopefully the rest of the summer. So I've just been settling in, playing lots of games this week, and I'm pretty sure my freezer is broken. So that's another thing that I'm it's just like with houses, especially when you have an older house or maybe even a newer house, Colin, in your experience as well, is just like you wrap up one thing. I mentioned the fascia on the corner of my house a few weeks ago. Finally got that fixed. It's about $1,000 out the door, just gone. And now it's the fridge. So it's just like, it's always, there's no relief. But, I guess, at least I have a house to live in. That's the bright side.
You're going to have to drop into the Pacific and extract one of those fridge freezers from a fucking Chinese container ship, because who knows?
I know. I've heard about that.
Yeah.
That they're hard to get right now. So that's going to be even better. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, it is. It is always something. Yeah, my house was built new, but I'm living in it as the new build. But yeah, it's always so there's nothing really breaking yet. The big things are the following: Rush and Treble have destroyed half the baseboards in the entire house. Rush ate an entire windowsill. Treble loves eating the corners of the woodwork. We're just letting them. Like, I spray and stuff, but I'm just like, it's kind of like a sunken cost. And then like in a few years, we'll paint everything or whatever, and I'll just have them replace it that time. And then it's just like there is just a lot of random shit. It's like, why is the garage door squeaking? Oh God, why is the garage door squeaking? Yeah. Why? And then I introduced a pool into my life for some reason. So now we're dealing with that, but that's nice. I'm going to go in the pool after this. I think it's nice out today. What is it? It's 88 degrees as we speak right now. By the way, I don't know if you guys have that weather module that I'm always talking about at the bottom of your Windows screen.
Oh yeah.
I turned mine off.
Have you noticed that for the last 2 days, at least for me, only on my laptop, when it says like sunny, it's like a red star, like a dying red star. I'm like, why is it red? Why is that telling me that it's nice out? It's red. I don't want it to be red.
It's kind of like that for me right now. It says it's like 75 degrees and it's cloudy, but there's like an ominous red sun behind this cloud. And I'm like, does Microsoft know that the sun isn't blood red?
This is bleeding through one of their many time warps that they've probably worked out. And this is from another planet entirely and in another time. Or maybe it's Earth in the future when the sun is dying. And they're like, well, the sun is turning red. It's turning into a giant. Oh, there it goes. It engulfs the Earth. Oh, no.
This is how computer scientists see the sun.
Yeah. Yes. They don't remember. They vaguely remember it. So that's how they did it. All right. Well, my friends, thank you for joining all of us today here on Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your support over there. Could not do it without you. Supporting us on Patreon gets you a bunch of different perks, including 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus, ad-free and early. Most of those are exclusive to Patreon as well. And the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, monthly Q&As, get your name in the credits, all the rest. Thank you so much for your kindness over there. And Discord turning into like one of the big perks over there. We have almost 5,000 of you now on our Discord server. Quite the buzzing happening place. I think that's what the kids say today. And quite the happening place. Sacred Symbols Plus topics recently include one about Ukraine. I had a Ukrainian gamer on to talk about his experience playing. He lives in the western part of Ukraine, but about his experience keeping his job going and how they're playing games and escaping or not escaping into games and all the rest. I just sat down and did one about Final Fantasy XIV. It's like a primer for Final Fantasy XIV I did with a super fan of the game. We did our Quarry spoiler cast and review discussion. I sat down with PSVR Without Parole to do a PSVR and PSVR 2 spoiler or discussion. Street Fighter, Russia, eFootball, on and on and on. Lots of good stuff coming up soon as well. Some political topics, of course, having to do with games, some social topics, some interviews, some mailbags, all the rest. I did want to say, however, one of the things that people really dug were these 2 dueling Russian and Ukraine episodes I did. And Matt Galiza wrote in and said, "Hello, gentlemen. This question is for Colin. I've really enjoyed both your Sacred Symbols Plus episodes, Gaming While Russian and Gaming While Ukrainian. I understand for the reason for these 2 given what's going on, but I'm curious, would you consider keeping this going? I'd love to hear more interviews with gamers from all around the globe. It could be another show entirely or just an occasional Plus episode, but I'd love to hear more." Yeah, we wouldn't do another show, but yeah, I like that idea because when I did the eFootball one, I believe that gamer was in Ecuador. So we actually got a little taste of just Ecuadorian gaming, like the Ecuadorian gaming scene and the flavor there. It would be interesting to go and talk to people in various places. And I don't mean this to be offensive, but I would love to particularly talk to people in like the developing world because it's not very interesting to talk to someone like, how do you play games in France? Like, I don't care. I don't care how you do anything in France. I want to be really clear about that. The French specifically, don't care about. But in all seriousness, I think it would be much more interesting to be like, what is it like playing games in Argentina or Chile or, and these are, first world countries too, but you understand what I'm saying out there. For instance, I've been really, really fascinated for many years about the Brazilian game scene because it is so Sega dominated, or it was. And I've said this on the show in the past, so it's redundant to a lot of people, but they have such onerous economic embargoes on foreign electronics that new consoles cost thousands of dollars there. And this has been the case for years. So shit like Sega Master System and later Sega Genesis were huge in Brazil for years after they had come and gone here, not only with new games, mostly, bootlegs. So I agree. It would be cool. I'm glad you guys are enjoying those. So yeah, we'll keep that in mind for future episodes. I also wanted to wish all of our American audience, about 2/3 of our audience is American. We are American, of course. Happy 4th of July. It will have happened. I think this goes live for everyone on 4th of July. So I hope you're enjoying your holiday or have enjoyed your holiday. We take the piss, as it were, out of America quite often on this show, but I'm very proud to be American. I think this is a wonderful country. I think we are a net positive. I don't know that we're an overwhelming positive in the world anymore.
Yeah.
But we're a net positive, I think. And I appreciate what the country has done for us and for the world in the good ways. So happy Independence Day as well. And by the way, before we get into topics of discussion, I wanted to acknowledge something else. A small trophies website actually wrote about something that I was hoping someone was going to pick up, and they did, although it hasn't gotten picked up wider, which is this idea that we weren't able to put Taiwan as a country in Super Perils of Baking. And people were like, well, why would you put that in the game? And I'm like, well, it was part of a satirical recipe entry in our game. But a small website picked it up and people started talking about it. And I thought that was pretty cool. And we actually got a lot of feedback, a lot of it private. And people kind of showing appreciation that we kind of were able to stick to our guns and circumvent the rule by kind of saying like, we're literally not allowed to do it, but here's the intent, keeping it the same in the other games. And we're kind of the first people to talk about how this rule exists at all. It puts a lot of things into context about, for instance, why Arc System Works would remove stuff from BlazBlue. Don't know why they didn't say why they were doing it. We were happy to do it. And I can't take too much credit, guys, because it was really Ben that talked about it on the spoiler cast for Super Perils of Baking. kind of letting the cat out of the bag that, yeah, we weren't able to do that and have the game on PlayStation, but we were able to circumvent it pretty obviously. And when we explicitly asked about it, we were told we were not allowed to do that. I think this is a much bigger story than is being led on. I'm not doing it because it's like, it's good marketing for our game or something like that. I just think it's cool to kind of be at the forefront of that conversation. And I hope that it continues, because I think it's important to ask, like, why did we have to remove that or like circumvent it so that everyone knew exactly what we were saying? And I'm really proud that we stuck to our guns and like kept, otherwise kept it unedited, intent the same. So thank you all out there for your kind words on that. It's much appreciated. All right, let's get into the topics of discussion. Dustin, I want to begin with something for you. BD Squat wrote in and said, "Hey Fats, first time writing in. And after Dustin and Ben's meet and greet near Philadelphia last weekend, I felt I had to. I saw Dustin post the meet and greet to Twitter and wanted to go. So just to catch everyone up, you went to too many games in the suburbs of Philly. Dagan was there as well, but you went with Ben. So everyone's caught up."
Right.
So he says, "I live 10 minutes away and didn't meet anyone at the Butler live show. Thought this would be my shot. I got to the brewery, saw Dustin, Ben, and Dagan, and immediately walked straight past them. My anxiety was in high gear, and I couldn't find the courage to say hello. After an hour sitting in the mostly empty brewery, I felt I must do this. So I joined the crowd and was immediately met by kindness from the Sacred Crew. I met everyone and sat with Dustin for a few minutes. Moments later, I could feel anxiety bubbling again. While they were playing Turtles, I backed away and left unannounced. Total Irish goodbye. That is my style, homie. So love that shit. So Dustin and the rest, if you ever noticed, I apologize for my awkwardness, but appreciate your welcoming and inclusion. The Sacred Family is a great group. Thanks for doing what you do." So I thought this was interesting. No worries as far as I'm concerned about the Irish goodbye. I love Irish goodbyes. That's the best. I don't need to go. I hate saying goodbye to everyone. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm out. Kind of like George Costanza thing is what I want to do when I'm leaving a family function, but you can't. You got to go get, especially in the Italian side, you got to go kiss everyone. How you doing? All right, good to see you. Good, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's a big thing in my family too, where it's
Yeah.
like, it's usually like, okay, we're leaving. So I'm like, okay, good. We got about an hour before
Right.
we actually leave. Because
Right, exactly.
everybody's got to talk to people. And then like by the time they're done saying goodbye to the last person, they have to say goodbye to the first person again because they've run into them so much later.
Right, exactly.
And
And the mass moves like towards like that door, and then the mass of people moves outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a tradition in my family that goes back to my grandfather, who RIP, has been dead for 25 years, but they like when you're leaving, they push your car like from behind, like, all right, bye. And like, so it's like they like want you to leave. So like everyone gets behind the car and pushes it away or whatever. I like to be a dickhead.
I like that. Yeah.
But Dustin, I'm sorry. We had a little interlude as we often do, Chris and I,
okay.
but how did this go? What went on here? What is BD Squad talking about here? Do you know?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I knew exactly when I saw you write this question here. And what's funny is we had a decent crew together of fans that were there, and it was perfect because it was like, I want to say around 10 or so people that were there. And so it was like the perfect amount that it wasn't too intimate where it's like, oh, one or two people showed up. This is now slightly awkward. But it was big enough and small enough that we got to spend a lot of quality time with each person that was there, which was totally great. And in the case of BD Squat, I believe that he came out and told us that he was waiting in the brewery. We were like, bro, it was not awkward, and now it feels a little awkward.
Right,
so I think he had an unintended reverse effect, but that's okay.
Right.
And we did notice his Irish goodbye, because when we were going to leave, I was like, what happened to him? Like, where did he go? And so he was just gone.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Who needs to? You don't need to say goodbye.
But as far as the convention, I just want to say real quick, we had a awesome time at Too Many Games. For people who don't know, like Colin said, it's in King of Prussia in Philadelphia, focused on retro gaming for the most part, but they had like awesome, like a whole arcade, just like vendors as far as the eye can see. And I did make a couple of pickups. I wanted to show you guys. I saw this was Impulse Tactics.
Are you bummed that it's the greatest hits?
No, because this was an impulse buy and it was a good deal. So I was like,
cool. How much was it? Do you mind if I ask how much it was?
I want to say it was 20 or 25.
Oh, that seems really reasonable.
Well, okay.
Great.
So Final Fantasy VII Black Box. This was 50.
That seems again, I don't know anything about games anymore, but in old game collecting, but cartridge games are going for so much that it's like, well, this would be the next step. Is the PS1?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think I got so Final Fantasy 9. I think this was 35 black
Nice.
box.
Great game.
Metal Gear Solid. I think I got this for 40-ish, around that. So that also wasn't bad. A random pickup, Toy Story 2 for PS1. This one was 10, which I think it was priced wrong, and he just didn't care. And then, this is very important, one of my holy grails that I've been wanting for a very long time, I used to have.
Show me.
Mega Man Legends 2.
Oh, the
I
second
bought
one.
this from a fan that I met at the meetup because I was telling him how I wanted it, and he's like, I've got a second copy. And so it was still, I mean, the price was $130
Really?
for
Well, I mean,
this bad boy.
Whatever. I don't know. I've spent thousands of dollars. Look.
Which 130 was a fantastic deal, by the way. Like a fantastic deal.
I have just so many G.I. Joes, and they're all worth something, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I said last week. I want to buy your G.I. Joes out there. If you have 1982, 1994 G.I. Joes, I'm paying cash money for them.
Hell yeah.
But I totally understand because the price is just going up and up and up. And God, I feel like I'm being redundant, but I listened to an economist named Peter Schiff who said if you, and so again, no financial advice, but if you need non-perishables, just might as well buy them now.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and it's because his advice is like the inflation rate is just so out of control. It's like there's no reason to even wait. So I've been trying to buff out my collection as well. So no judgments from me. And I was saying on Discord, because people were showing cartridge games that were going for X, Y, and Z. And I said, I'm like, Dagan and I have a collection that is a 6-figure games collection. If that's literally how much, if that's how much you guys are paying for NES, SNES, Game Boy, N64 games, we have quite the valuable collection on our hands. And I don't think I even realized that. So it's kind of incredible. And of course I have so many fucking PS1. I have NES, SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, N64, PS1, Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube and Xbox. I mean, it's like, holy mother of God. I can't believe how much these things are worth. It's crazy because I saved all those Star Wars toys. Like I have a Luke Skywalker here in Hoth outfit. I think this was him from his Tauntaun. It was just in one of my boxes. I found it. I think this thing is like literally worthless. Like I think that this could just literally be thrown in the garbage because that's how many they made. And so no judgments for me because I've overspent and I've underspent, and collecting is part of the game. And do you feel satiated?
I do. I actually think I have someone in mind that I think I want to ask because I have an idea for a Sacred Symbols Plus episode about collecting, and the market is so incredibly interesting because it was during prices were already steadily going up, but with COVID and stimulus going out, in addition to people my age in like the PS1 era starting to have real adult jobs and stuff like that, the market's crazy. Like I was eyeing a copy of Tomba, the first one, the entire weekend, and it was $200 for a copy of Tomba. And I was like, I had already bought Mega Man, so I was like, I can't do it. But Colin, I thought of you because you mentioned about how you once saw just stacks of copies of Earthbound complete, right?
No, it was
on clearance.
It was Castlevania Bloodlines.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which is still a very valuable Genesis game. Dude, I saw at Toys R Us, they had 50 of them. This was probably 1999 or something like that. It's like, dude, but I think back, dude, I had access to all this shit. I mean, it's just none of us really knew. If I fucking knew, I would have made sure at 15-year-old Colin would have gotten in the necessary investment. I also remember seeing a pyramid of NES top loaders at Toys R Us in 1994, 1995 for $50 each. And yeah, so I remember Virtual Boy being on clearance. And it's just like, oh, I don't want this fucking trash. $20 for a Jaguar? Imagine just having bought a whole pallet of Jaguars and just putting it away. I mean,
well, one of the craziest things I saw there was a sealed copy of Earthbound. $7,000.
Yeah, that's insane.
And that is a good price because on price charting it's $8,000. I was like, holy shit, insane. What is going on? It's crazy.
That makes sense. It makes sense though. I mean, like if that's it's so funny because I think back until like 2012 when I was like kind of starting to get into like collecting things and like trying to like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get the consoles that I never had, just to have them. And I remember specifically seeing NES games that are going for hundreds now for like 30 and being like, it seems like a bit much. And now it's comedic.
Oh, it's insane.
Well, I think back in the wild days of eBay, I used to love eBay in like 97, 98, 99. That's when I used to use it a lot. And I think I think I told you guys that I never paid my eBay fees ever. Like I just used eBay for years and just never paid my fees as a high school student because you used to have to send in your fees by check. This was before PayPal. And so they would like send you a bill and I just never paid the bill. I don't know how. I have no idea how I got away with that. But nonetheless, I remember at that time because I was buying and selling NES and SNES games a lot. And the highest selling NES games at that time were like Dragon Warrior 4 and Dragon Warrior 3. And those games were going for like $60, $70, $80. And I was like, oh my God, how could you possibly? And I remember being like, in 10th grade being like, that's insanity. First of all, I have them. But second of all, who the fuck's going to pay $80 for Dragon Warrior 4? I don't think you can find that game complete loose. That might be $1,000 plus game, I would assume now, with all the maps and because that's why it's so expensive. It came with so much shit.
You said Dragon Warrior 4?
Yeah.
Okay, on pricecharting.com, the complete price, actually not bad. If you have it complete, it's $396.
Oh, not bad.
But
that seems like a steal to me.
Yeah.
I have
it's, Dragon Warrior 4. Dude, price charting is a sick website because it shows you a graph. And you can just see right in like mid 2020, every single chart just goes like straight up.
What happened then?
Yeah,
the government sent everyone lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not you need it or not is another thing entirely, but that's what happened. And when you send indiscriminate money to everyone, and some people are like, I don't need this. What do they do? They're like, they go to eBay and they buy fucking Earthbound. Anyway, all right, Chris, I got one for you. Dakota Brown wrote in. Just as an aside, he says, "Hey CDC, can we take a second to acknowledge Chris's quality YouTube content? The man took a shot every time he died in Elden Ring for our enjoyment. Top tier content. My only criticism is his choice of liquor, whiskey over vodka all day, every day. Love you all, and thanks for the amazing podcast. I mean, vodka is a little lower proof, so I think that probably saved your life. Depends on the whiskey he's talking about, of course.
Well, I was drinking like Polish, like I don't even know what the hell it was. It was like pure Polish vodka or something. I don't think it was fewer proof or anything, but whiskey to me, like I used to be more into whiskey because there was more flavor to it. And I remember thinking like specifically like Jack's Tennessee Honey. And I remember being like, that was the one that I would get all the time because it tastes like something. And then I realized that like later on, I was like, I kind of don't want my alcohol to taste like anything. Like I want it to be as unintrusive as possible. And so like vodka has just become the most safe thing. I can't do tequila because it'll kill me if I have like even a little bit of it.
Yeah, tequila. That's my brother Dagan's. That's his drink. I don't like tequila either. It grosses me out.
I can't do it. Like
or mezcal.
I
I don't like that kind of. Yeah.
A single shot of tequila and I'll wake up in space somehow. I feel like there's something like hallucinogenic borderline about it. And it's like, your life
gets that yellow Mexican TV show haze.
Yeah. The Vince Gilligan's Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was definitely, I mean, the next day after that was definitely a day.
I bet. Yeah. Vodka. Nothing makes you understand the Russian experience more than vodka. Nothing puts the Bolshevik Revolution in context quite like vodka, I think.
Oh, dude, for context, that video was like, I think I streamed for 6 hours and I think I took I think the final number was 13 shots.
That's a lot.
So like I somehow survived, but like, we did it.
Yeah, that's a lot. That would knock me on my ass. I can drink, but not so much anymore. Well, I can always drink, but I don't drink as much as I used to. I was getting a little out of control in my late 20s, early 30s. Back when people remember I had like literally, I was buying so much bourbon. I had like 60, 70, 80 bottles of bourbon at one time. I used to put the pictures on Twitter just of like my shelf in San Francisco. And I had so much bourbon. I was probably a little soaked at that time. Sorry about that. All right. Kyle for office. We do have a couple of corrections. Plus, as I always tell you guys, sometimes someone tries to correct something that's not actually false. And I have to come and make it an example of them. Because you got to be careful when you're writing to the show. But let's start with the positives. Kyle for office wrote in and said, "Hello, frog genocidus, Colin and Sons. I take umbrage with that. I bought the frog log. I go out there and I take the frogs and I throw them away from the pool at night so they just go away. I can't help it if they're stupid enough to go and be in the skimmer in the morning. But a lot of them are dying, but not as many now that we have the
less
situation.
Genocidal, okay.
Yeah, the less genocide. Maybe just mass murder at this point. Small correction. On last week's episode, you said Neversoft made MDK. MDK was actually made by Shiny, the guys that did Earthworm Jim, one of my brother's favorites. He's coming up a lot today. Neversoft was responsible for reporting MDK to the PlayStation, which likely caused the confusion. Obligatory chicken sex reference. Thank you, Kyle. That is true. Thank you for that correction. The other thing that someone wrote in here, and this is also true, Niall G wrote in and said, hey, CDC, in the last episode, you talked about the new gaming studio Lithos. Although you mentioned that the game will have NFTs, from what I've noticed, I can't find any mention or use of the word NFT apart from placed inside a quote in parentheses in a Games Radar article that talks to Mumbauer. The game is said to be using the Hedra network. Sounds like something out of a fucking sci-fi dystopia.
That sounds like a G.I. Joe thing.
Yeah,
like
exactly. It's like it's like a 5-part episode. To unravel, you got to go all parts of the world to unravel the Hedra network. And they said released an articles regarding Ashfall stating, quote, gamers can choose to play the game leveraging the Hedra network or scavenging discovery and exclusivity are the focus for a build, sell, and trade experiences, end quote. The only way I can see the leveraging of the Hedra network in a game is to use their currency to buy and sell in-game items, but also the possibility of exchanging them for H-bar. I don't know what the fuck that means. By the way, I wanted to just read this, Niall, because it is true. I went and looked, and they don't necessarily talk about NFTs in their press release. I went and looked at their press release itself. It doesn't come up. But it comes up in terms of the Hedra network and I guess relations to that. But I have good news for you. I'm in communication with both John Garvin and Michael Mumbauer, and they're interested in coming on Sacred Symbols Plus to talk about the game. So hopefully we'll be able to ask them all of the pertinent questions in the near future. And I'll, of course, keep you guys apprised of that. It might just show up on your feed, but maybe not.
Your credit score is really important. And if you're smart, and I know full well that you are, you can manage your credit easily, safely, and to great effect with my friends at Chime. Indeed, you can learn more right now at chime.com/sacred. See, a good credit score is earned by using credit and then paying back what you owe on time. And it's good to build credit actively, especially when you're just getting started in the dreaded adult world, because you'll inevitably encounter situations where a good credit score truly matters, and where a bad credit score can sink you. With the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card, you can make reasonable purchases in your everyday life and raise your credit score through prompt on-time payments. As long as you stay within the guidelines, which is quite easy to do, you can use Chime's credit building Visa card without annual fees or interest. And as I've learned time and time again in my own life, good credit means good things. My careful credit use through my adult life led me years later to a mortgage at an amazing rate. And good credit can mean a lot in your own life too, whether you're looking to rent an apartment, finance a car, or even apply for a job. The beauty of building credit is that you have all the control. You just need to use the tools at your disposal, stay well within your personal financial limits, and remain responsible. Make sure your credit card is working for you with the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa card. Continue your credit journey with Chime. Signing up takes only 2 minutes and it doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/sacred. That's chime.com/sacred. To begin building your credit score the steady and responsible way, head to chime.com/sacred. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A., pursuant to a license from Visa USA. Chime checking account and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to score may vary, and some users' score may not improve.
All right. Finally, false alert from Lamont Westmoreland, who thinks he knows better. Good day, sirs. I have a beef of the utmost importance with Mr. Moriarty. Over the last handful of episodes, I've noticed you have been pronouncing it Silicon, as in Silicon Valley. Am I crazy? Are no other ears assaulted by this flagrant mispronunciation? I spent all my 26 years of existence knowing it to be pronounced Silicon. None of this Silicon madness. Explain yourself, Colin. Man, you shouldn't have come out like this. You could have just done the most minor amount of research. I lived in Silicon Valley, so I think I would know how to say it. But it is pronounced Silicon Valley. That's how you say it when you're in California, where I was, and even outside of it. No one calls it Silicon Valley unless that's like calling San Francisco Frisco. You can say it. It might sound like something you heard on Full House, but no one that's there says it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying it's Silicon Valley. And just so I wasn't crazy, I went and looked it up. And there's this awesome video of like a local news thing in the Bay Area talking to these people about like, how is it said? Like, how do you say it? And they all said, it's Silicon Valley. That's how you say it. That's the local pronunciation. And it's much like the towns in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Dustin, how do you say CONCORD?
Concord.
Right, but that's true. The word, but in like a Concord grape. But in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, that's Concord.
Concord, yeah.
Right?
Well, that's like Lancaster and Lancaster,
Right.
in Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
Ben is very, very adamant about one of them, and I never remember which one because I simply just don't care.
Don't give a shit. You don't care.
I remember a big one for me was old friend of mine, Jared Petty. I think he works at Limited Run Games now. He's from Kentucky, and I used to go to Kentucky because I was a huge bourbon head, and that's where it's made. And he was the one that checked me because I used to call it Louisville, Kentucky, and he's like, no, it's Louisville, like Louisville, Kentucky. It's like that. It's not Louisville, it's Louisville.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So it's the same thing with silicon. You have silicone. That's not what we're talking about at all. You have silicon, which is the stuff that the chips are made of. That's where it comes from. It's silicon, but no one says that.
Right.
Silicon chip.
Well,
Silicon Valley.
But
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, to me, it just seems like just different influx. Because I've definitely said it both ways when talking about it. You know what I mean? I think like when I'm talking about it in like a casual conversation, I'm usually saying silicon. But if I'm putting like emphasis on it for whatever reason, I feel like I do say Silicon Valley sometimes. And I don't know if that's necessarily. It's obviously not the right way. Like it'd be like, oh, Colin, you're going to go home to Longest Land.
Right. Exactly.
You know, like it's like it's not exactly that egregious. But at the same time, I feel like it's a weird problem to bring up. Like, oh, you pronounce it another acceptable way.
Yeah, it just seems
like
Lamont's correction needed to be countercorrected because he says it with such confidence, but I'm like, and he's like, my 26 years. Well, half of those 26 years I lived there.
Right.
So Lamont doesn't say it.
Stand down, Lamont.
Yeah.
Dr. Ken has a passing question, by the way, before we get into the actual meat of everything here for our episode. Dr. Ken, hi CDC. It's summer, so I got to ask, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And why is it mango? Cheers, mango. God. There's only one acceptable ice cream flavor. I'll let you guys guess what it is. Otherwise, I'm not interested. And that's always been true. It will be true forever. And there are no exceptions to the rule. And that's vanilla, of course. Dustin, ice cream flavors. Talk to me about them.
My first choice is with you, Colin, vanilla, and it makes me mad when people are like, oh, you want plain ice cream? It's like, no, vanilla is a flavor. And some places, maybe it is a little boring, but if you find a place that has excellent vanilla ice cream, it hits different, trust me. But my other go-to is coffee flavored ice cream, of course. I mean, there's nothing better than a nice, delicious coffee ice cream.
I don't think I've ever even thought about that.
It's great. It's like a nice little coffee and cream, but frozen. I don't know. I mean, it tastes exactly how you'd expect it to taste.
I can imagine it.
Yeah.
I've always been more of a mint chocolate chip guy.
Ooh,
for whatever reason. Like that's always been my default. I do like vanilla though, more than most people. I feel like it gets a bad rap. It is plain ice cream though. Like that is not, I don't think that's disputable. It is a flavor, but in the same way it's like cheese pizza, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's good, but it also is, that's like the default. It's Commander Shepard on the box ice cream,
So wait, are you saying that all ice creams start with a base of vanilla and then stuff is added to it?
Well, no,
that's what you're implying.
It's not so much that, what would be flavorless ice cream? Like I can't even conceptualize that.
Probably just milk and sugar.
Yeah.
And I assume that's why I said not all vanillas are created equal, because some of them you get like, when you get the vanilla ice cream that's like vanilla bean and it's got like little speckles, like black speckles of something in it. Like, I don't know what I'm assuming it's some kind of vanilla stuff, but it's different. It's extra, it's good. That's why I'm saying they're not all created equal. Maybe maybe we can meet in the middle, Chris. Some vanillas are plain for sure.
I would agree
not
with that.
all of them.
Yeah, if you get like really, like if you're in like specifically, if you ever have ice cream, like fresh ice cream in a dairy town, I don't think there's anything that you could go wrong with. Like you could pick any flavor and it'd be delicious. Like that, like I had dairy, I had, what is it? Vanilla ice cream, like fresh vanilla ice cream in Tillamook, I think, which is where they make like a ton of, like they process a lot of cheese. And
is that Wisconsin?
That is, no, it's Northern California. It's, it's in between. Oh my God. It's in between Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Oh, like in the valley somewhere. Or not in the valley, in that desert region.
It's closer. What the fuck is it? It's Sacramento.
Oh,
it's around
Sacramento. Oh, so it's above San Francisco.
Yeah.
Got it.
I got my geography all fucked up. But that place is crazy.
Cool.
If you're ever in that area and you're an ice cream person, check it out.
Tillamook.
Nuts.
Love it. I love my cheese. Cheddar cheese specifically. I put like a pound on my... Everyone knows how I do it. You know, you got to put like a pound of it on the chips.
Cheddar's
then when you're getting tired of it, you just peel it off the chips and you eat the cheese. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Chris?
No, I said cheddar's also the best flavor of cheese cracker, and I refuse. Like anytime I see like, oh, it's goldfish, but it's blue cheese.
Oh,
fuck you.
Fucked.
We got to ban blue cheese, period.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just weird.
Blue
Get outta here
cheese
with that.
should get drawn and quartered, in my opinion.
This is what happens when you give the French too much power. Why am I ragging on the French so much today? I don't know. They don't probably listen to this show anyway. All right. Let's see here. A few things to get into. I wanted to say Bernie Stolar died. This is interesting. He was a long time ago. I read about him to refresh myself. I had never met him. He was long gone. I think he went to Mattel after he was at Sony and Sega. But in the 90s, he was a driving force at very early PlayStation SCEA, Sony Computer Entertainment America, which he helped co-found. And he apparently was responsible for getting quite a few games from disparate developers, including stuff like Oddworld and Ridge Racer, which became pretty attached to PlayStation later on, and others. So he went to Sega after PlayStation 1 launched and helped launch the Dreamcast, and then he was out of the industry after that. But he's just an interesting man. You would see circulate once in a while. His name would come up. He's interesting to read about if you guys want to go read his obituary or whatever, which is on various sites. But yeah, Bernie Stolar, R.I.P. It's 75. Kind of young. All right. The big news, though, that I wanted to get into right this moment is what's happening with God of War Ragnarok, because we're recording this episode on June 30th, and it was today that we were expecting, actually, and the rumors had long indicated that we would get a release date for God of War Ragnarok. However, it seems to be that announcement has been delayed indefinitely. Xputer writes, and of course it's Tom Henderson over there, well-known leaker, so very reliable. He says in part, quote, rumblings of a God of War Ragnarok announcement started earlier in June, with Bloomberg's Jason Schreier addressing speculation that the title would be delayed in 2023. In Schreier's report, it was said that the game is still on track for a 2022 release, with a release date announcement coming later in the month. And then he talks about, and that's end quote, he talks about how that Snitch Twitter account then posted its weird binary thing indicating that a June 30th announcement was coming for God of War. Now, Tom Henderson writes in part, quote, it's understood that this announcement was still the plan until just yesterday, with Sony announcing the release date of the game in addition to the God of War's collector's editions. It's believed that the original contents of the blog consisted of collector's edition details, the release date, and assurance that the game is doing well in development and that gameplay of the game will be at a later date. It's unclear what caused the delay, but sources have suggested that both the blog post with the release date announcement and the accompanying video of the collector's editions are ready to go at any given moment if they're given the green light. Personally, though, and this is where I agree with him, he says, I'd be happy if plans were changed for a dedicated state of play with all of the announcements and gameplay, end quote. So this is interesting. I'm wondering, and we'll go to you first, Chris. What do you make of this? What do you make of this God of War Ragnarok saga? I feel like here's my theory. I'm just going to pitch it to you. I think the game probably is ready for this year. I think that they realize, like, why are we going to announce the game without showing it again? Like, is that a good move? Like, shouldn't we have something to show? There's still a lot of time, assuming the game comes out in early to mid-November, so they can kind of take their time and be like, well, why don't we wait a few weeks? Why don't we don't have to let's just get some new footage and put something together and have something a little more exciting than a blog post, because it does seem kind of throwaway and maybe not equivalent to God of War Ragnarok's stature in the industry. So do you think that there's any plausibility to that? What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would be sincerely surprised if it's not ready for 2022, because I mean, we know from the fact that it got rated in Korea, that's like really just abnormal for something to be pushed that way. So I think it probably is ready. I do think there is a lot of validity to that idea that, like, maybe it's like, hey, maybe we should really have an event for this thing instead of just sort of unceremoniously putting on a blog. At the same time, though, I don't think you lose much steam from just announcing a date for something that we all already understand is real, you know? Like, I don't think that's it's it's simultaneously important, but not also, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, we need that date, and I do think it's important for them to get it out at some point, but that doesn't necessarily need to be accompanied by this insane blowout. Like, you can have one and then the other, and I don't think you miss out on that much. So I just find I find the managing of this entire situation very just befuddling, because I don't know, like I just feel like it would have been smart to just come out with the date already, like a while ago.
Yeah, I don't know what they have to. First of all, I have no idea what their strategy is, and none of us really do. As far as we have The Last of Us September 2nd, I think they kind of announced that closer to the date. If you assume this is November, then there maybe that signals a new cycle in which they're going to try to announce dates much closer. Dustin, it also kind of brings up, I mean, we must bring up the idea that this game might be worried about it, but I just don't think so. And the reason that I don't think so is because one of the things that Tom Henderson leaks is that the collector's edition is pretty much ready to go. He says it's a 1-to-1 scale replica of Thor's hammer, with 2 editions being named the collector's edition and the Jotnar edition. And the Jotnar edition comes with just the hammer in the game, while the collector's edition comes with other pieces such as some badges, a map of the world, and more. It's not to say that that's manufactured or ready to go, but it seems like that's comfortable enough to say, like, yeah, we're going. So get your pre-orders in now. It's not something you would do when you didn't have a certain date. So I'm not so worried about it moving from November. But to Chris's point, I'm not really sure why there's a mystery around the release date. Just say it. If you're going to do it, just say it already. What do you think?
Yeah, it's strange to me that this was a change that happened for at least us in the time of recording in the last 24 hours. Like, what happened during that time that made them change their mind? But in one sense, if you want to call it a controversy around this release date, which it's starting to feel like one now based on how people are acting online, it's kind of created hype where there is none, and because there's nothing new. So now the lack of nothing new has created new interest and excitement in a title, which Sony's probably like, well, sure, why not? I mean, what do we have? Like, why don't we wait and just blow it out? So then when they finally do show it and have the gameplay along with all the announcements, the release date and the special editions, pre-order now, it is a all at once blow your load moment that has people that have been clearly very frustrated on Twitter about this situation extremely excited. Once they reveal all that shit, no one remembers anything else. Like, this conversation, like, is totally, no one's going to be like, oh, well, they were real. I mean, us as commentators will bring up this situation at some point, but for most people, no one's going to remember how they held out on the release date of God of War for so long, unless something horrendous goes wrong, which then it's a different story. But overall, people will forget about this, and it just is going to lead to that bigger explosion on social media when it does happen. It's frustrating for the fans, but I can kind of understand why they're doing it, unless it's totally unintentional and there's something going on with Sony PR in this game that seems extra chaotic. Maybe it is a negative situation, but to change within, like, have everything ready. The thing about these two is that people write, think about all the time and effort in these blog posts. Someone has to write it out. You have to make all these trailers, and it's all got to be ready to go. And so to change it at the last moment, I mean, that's going to create more work and maybe they're going to have to change stuff. So it seems strange all around, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just going to make people more excited for this game.
It's conspicuous. I mean, there's just no doubt that it's conspicuous, but I don't know to what end. I don't know that I'm that worried about it. I still think some people wrote in saying I'm crazy, but I still think that this game is not going to score as well as the original one. Not even close.
Oh yeah.
And
people think you're crazy for that?
Yeah, people, because I was saying what we were saying, like mid to high 80s or something like that. I was like, that seems pretty safe to me. I don't know. I mean, if God of War's a 90, God of War Ragnarok's a 9 or above on Metacritic, I think that's a great sign for all the time they took. But I feel like it's a new director. I don't know, a lot of pressure. And I think that the key changing expectations. It's not 2018 anymore. It's not even 2020 anymore. I will reiterate that I think PlayStation games are being held to I don't want to say a higher standard necessarily than everything else, but just a different standard, because people are like, all right, we've seen this. And I think that what's going to end up happening is that there's a risk, of course, of people saying, well, that we've already seen this God of War. And I hope that that's not the case. I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm not that excited about it, but I'm looking forward to playing it. As far as the frustration is concerned, I wanted to bring this up. Cedric S. wrote into us and said, hi, slit faces. This question is for all. Why is there so much hate and malice in the industry? Isn't playing video games supposed to be about having fun? After reading Cory Barlog's tweets about being patient on info about God of War Ragnarok's release date, and Alana Pierce's tweets about calming down on more info on it, reading about Ron Gilbert's hate messages he got about sharing info about Return to Monkey Island, fans of this whole industry have really put me off. Just to touch base on that, Ron Gilbert said he's just not going to share anything about the game anymore at all, because he's just tired of dealing with people. Like you, Colin, I'm old enough to remember the only gaming community we had was the school lunchroom. There was little if no hate outside of the occasional Mario is better than Sonic or Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter arguments, but why is a community that's about the celebration of an industry that we love seemingly always so toxic? I understand that people are wanting more info about Ragnarok and are becoming more and more frustrated with the lack of a release date, but aren't there hundreds of other games they could play until the release date? What does harassing the devs, including oftentimes sending death threats, do? I agree. I don't know if we have to elaborate on this, but I am concerned about just general toxicity in society and how it leaks into everything, even things that just don't matter. And this doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, this just doesn't matter. The only people this truly matters to is if you own Sony stock and you want them to like hit a certain milestone so you can get your fucking Q3 fiscal 2022 sales up before the end of the year, or if you're inside Sony and your marketing scheme and your strategy for content management, all of that is on the line. Otherwise, who gives a shit? It's just like, it'll be there when it's there. I just don't understand this. Because Dustin, you were describing it as the fans being frustrated, and I get that, but like, why?
Well, I think there's an element where now in the online era, the social media era, that people make these things their identity. And I mean, the three of us have done that to an extent where it's like, people are like, oh, Halo, Chris Ray gun, right? Like Persona, Dustin, whatever. And Colin, PlayStation overall, as far as like the OG, right? But it's like one of those things where it's like, we've made these part of our personalities, but if something goes wrong, it's not like we're gonna need therapy or something because you know how connected we are to it. But I think that is the case for some people, is that's like, this is their life, this is their personality, and when you're obscured behind a screen and you're anonymous or whatever, then shit like this happens. It's not just gaming either. I think that it's kind of a narrow sighted view into it, just because we're involved with gaming, we see it in that community, but look at any community online and you're going to see people being toxic, arguing, being assholes. It's just kind of the nature of the anonymous nature. Even if you're not anonymous, just the fact that you're not directly talking to someone, it's easy to just be like, fuck you, dude, whatever. You just type it, like whatever, and then you move on.
It's like a layer of separation that just kind of exists inherently within just being online. It's like this. I know everybody knows the idea of like mob mentality, the idea that like, you know, people act very, very differently when they're in a mob. And when you combine that with the fact that people act very, very differently when they're masked, you know, and completely anonymous, it's just like, this is kind of the inevitable end of that, where people are just like way worse to each other than they otherwise would be. And it's, I would agree. It's not games or any specific subcategory. It's just the internet. I've said for years, we're just not ready for this. We're not prepared for this. Whatever the fuck we've got, but we've got it. It's like Pandora's box is open. They ain't putting this genie back in the bottle. So,
well, I think the way we make it better is to just not participate, and that's kind of, and to give a different example of how content and how like a community might be run. It's not that we don't hold people's feet to the fire or have bad things to say about things and we joke around and all of that, but it's really about the culture you build around your product and the culture you build around what you're saying. And I think we do that pretty successfully. And I must say, since last October, when I stopped using Twitter for any reason, you know, to post other than to just post promotionally, it's given me a lot of time to reflect. First, you have to kind of stop yourself from responding. That's like a couple of weeks, but then you spend a lot of time being like, what was I even doing? Like, I don't even know, like, why is this important? I mean, people talk shit all the time about me or say things to me anywhere, and I can just ignore them. And that's what I've been doing. It's just like, oh, okay. Someone will bring up, oh, this person said this on Twitter, or this person said this about you on Reddit. And I'm like, I really don't care. Like, I don't have to feed it at all. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And I know it's a little nihilistic, but I don't mean it like that. It's just, I think we have to make this situation better. And I agree with you, Chris. It's as we've talked about in the past. I just think we're in these communication pipelines now that we're just not mentally built to be within, and people are still learning their way. But if I have advice for anyone, it's just to, like, I would just be a passive observer, which is what I am now. I don't need you don't need to participate at all. Let someone else be the characters. You don't have to be the character. You don't have to be the antagonist or the protagonist, and certainly treat people with respect as well. All right. This has been circulating. There have been some rumors over the last few weeks that Horizon's going to get a TV show as well. Now we kind of know more about it. It looks like it's going to be filming in Toronto or in Ontario, because they have to post like this. They basically on their website, because it's partially tax funded or tax exempt, I guess. They have like a rundown of who's working on it and what they're doing and all of this. So there's kind of this modest list of things for a show called Horizon 2074. And they show crew and talent from shows like The Expanse and The Boys and all of this. However, we don't really know much more about this right now. It's the name that I think people want to talk about. And Michael the Humble wrote in and said, "Howdy, gents. How do we feel about the alleged Horizon 2074 show? I personally would always prefer a show that expands lore instead of retelling the main story. So the idea of a show around the Zero Dawn collapse sounds pretty cool to me. They could even keep the event itself as a central mystery for the uninitiated." That is a cool idea, to keep it secret, assuming some people don't know. But I am of two minds with this, and Chris, we'll go to you first. Number one, I just feel like, can't we just chill a little bit? Why are we going to do everything now, like all at once? That we're going to just, everything's go. It's just stupid. Why don't you build one step to the next? You just keep hearing more and more about these projects, and I'm starting to get skeptical. Even though I thought Uncharted was good, this is a lot. We're just getting more and more and more of this. So I'm skeptical of that. However, I do like the idea, as Michael said, of we're garnering from the title Horizon 2074 that we're getting the Zero Dawn kind of event that caused everything that got fucked up many hundreds of years before the game takes place. So how do you feel about this? Do you want more? Are you concerned about Sony kind of getting a little, instead of dipping a toe in, now they have like a whole leg in the water?
Yeah, I'm mixed on it. I feel like it's the right approach for a TV show based on a video game like this, but it's also, I'm with you in the sense that this feels like a very shotgun spread kind of approach to, green lighting shows and siphoning IPs for traditional media. Like it feels like, okay, we got Twisted Metal, Uncharted, Last of Us, God of War, Horizon. So it's literally everything. Like I guess there's no Alien Nation show or nothing. Not yet, anyway. But one day. But I think, I don't know. It feels like they are going a little bit too fast and too furious with this. Just feels like a bit unnecessary. I also just feel like Horizon, I mean, I guess we don't know because it just says that a show is being worked on. We don't know like the nature of it. But based on what we've heard and based on like kind of the basic trajectory of a lot of these shows that we've seen so far or will be seeing, I have a worry that they're going to go live action with it. And I don't think they can do that. Like, I feel like if you're going to do a Horizon show, animate it. Like, please. Like at the very least, if you're going to make if you're going to make a TV show about every single video game under the sun, at the very least have the foresight to understand what is more appropriate for live action and what is more appropriate for animation. At the very least, do that. Because Castlevania live action would have been so embarrassing. Like, it would have been so terrible. And as we've seen with like Halo, it's a mess. So like, as long as they understand the mediums that they're working within, these could be cool. Like, we've been over this on the show before, but like, I'm not really the biggest proponent of this transmedia stuff. Out of very specific situations, I feel like things like The Last of Us are a bit redundant because the game's already so cinematic and so linear and so so grounded in its storytelling that I almost feel like it's missing something by not being a game. But I think there is room to expand on lore and the backgrounds of certain stories. And I think TV is a great medium for that. I think Destiny would be an awesome anthology series. I think Horizon has great potential for this exact kind of approach. I just worry that they're getting a bit too fast and loose with it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem deliberate to me. And
yeah. It seems a bit scatterbrained
right.
to me.
It's like we have a phase 1 and a phase 2. I always make fun of that stuff, but at least it's a plan. In this more loose format, especially with streaming television, they're kind of just letting people pitch them, it seems like. And so I have a full list of things that they're working on now. So Uncharted's out as far as films are concerned, but Gran Turismo film, Ghost of Tsushima film, and the Jack and Daxter film that Columbia apparently is doing as well. Then as far as TV shows, The Last of Us, Twisted Metal, God of War, and Horizon. So we have 8 things in play. And I think the thing with Horizon, and the thing with all of this, especially, but with Horizon getting a VR game as well at launch, Call of the Mountain, are we risking overexposing this? But what's interesting is The Last of Us is going with HBO, Twisted Metal is going with Peacock, God of War is going with Amazon, and Horizon is going with Netflix. So they're spreading the love there as well and letting them all try different things, which is cool. Dustin, I wanted to get you involved, though, talking about something kind of similar in a conversation with IGN. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Toru Nakahara, who is Sega's producer for Sonic, and so the movie and the live action movie, and then the Sonic Prime TV series, he basically says, and I'll just say, quote, Atlus's worlds are filled with high drama, cutting edge style, and compelling characters. Stories like those from the Persona franchise really resonate with our fans, and we see an opportunity to expand the lore like no one has seen or played before. So they talk about together, Sega and Atlus, Sega, of course, owns Atlus, are working to bring these stories and worlds to life through new mediums and for new audiences. So it seems like, at least loosely, they are open to adapting Persona, maybe even Catherine, something else. What do you think, especially about Persona? Do you think it's time? Of course, we have anime stuff with that. And of course, they have the spin-off games as well. The music games, the Musos, etc. But how do you feel about them getting involved perhaps in live action or a film or a TV show that is, say, Persona 3, 4, or 5 related?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. This is, it's going to be horrible if this happens. I think of other shows or movies that have done stuff like this, where you have real life people and then characters that have to be CG, right? The personas have to be CG. You can't, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can do a fucking Jim Henson puppet character of a persona. That actually might be kind of interesting. But I think of the Netflix Death Note and Ryuk in that, the Willem Dafoe's character is just like, he looks fine in the dark, but the couple scenes that you see him in more broad daylight, it's like that is added in afterwards. That's definitely not there. There's only certain scenarios where I think you can really pull this off, and the budget really has to be there. Like Detective Pikachu, I think that they managed to do decently well enough. It was shocking, no doubt, at first when we saw those real life Pokemon, but it was fine. But I'm sure that a lot of money went into that. And so I just think about there's a live action Japanese film of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is somewhat similar in that there's like powers, like there's like a spirit character or whatever that floats behind you or whatever. And it's bad. It looks so stupid. And you can maybe chalk that up to budget, but I'm just like, you're going to need a lot of budget to make this look right. And so I don't know, maybe this is a thing where they'll go and like purely Americanize it too, which is also disturbing, because being Japanese, taking place in Japan, in Tokyo, or the small town in Japan, is so tied to those games that I would hate to be like, here's Persona in the big city, in the Big Apple, and you know what I mean? Like they change it to not like try to make it more approachable, and I don't like that either. So please stop, Atlus. Please end my suffering. At least take me out or something first before you do this.
You have to understand that Sonic is emboldened them, dude. I mean, that's just the end of it. It's the beginning of the end of that.
It's the thing though. It's just like, I hope they have the foresight to be like, Sonic, for children. This is like practically an animated movie. It's got, and I know it's not, but it is at the same time. It's like, it's just not going to be the same. Are they going to animate the giant penis persona? Yes or no? Who knows?
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I'm in if they do the giant penis monster.
I love how
watch
Sonic just has negative ramifications everywhere. It just like,
dude, it's a
That's
net
so
negative.
radioactive.
We were talking about net and positive United States. Sonic, net negative for the entire
Oh my God,
world.
like black hole weight net negative. Yeah.
yeah. I love how you mentioned the Death Note thing too, because like Ryuk is the best part of that.
I know.
Which is saying something.
There's parts when he's really cool in it.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
there's
it's
other
also-
parts where it's just gross.
It's also Willem Dafoe, so that kind of helps. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know, man. When you said certain things have to be CG, for some reason, the thing that came to mind was, do you remember Code Lyoko, Dustin?
Code Lyoko.
It was
don't know what this is.
ugly. It was this hideous, like it was half anime, half CG, and they
Oh
had
my
these
goodness.
giant foreheads.
French, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I don't like this. I don't like what I'm seeing on my screen.
Oh
right
yeah,
now,
don't
Chris.
worry about it.
Yeah, this is
You're not
horrible.
missing out on anything.
It is French.
Oh, there was a Wii
I like-
game. I don't remember this.
Oh,
at all.
really?
Yeah, Quest for Infinity.
Yeah, it would be on the Wii.
Yeah, it would. All right, my friends. Well, we'll see what happens with that. I think, unfortunately, you're going to be disappointed because Sonic has made them so much money, and them getting second guessed and going back to the drawing board and making Sonic better, I think emboldened them even more. Because they're like, we listen, we know, but I think with Sonic Frontiers, they're not listening, and so gotta go fast. All right.
Yeah, I will say that
Please.
ugly Sonic in that show, or not that show,
Oh, and
that
Chip and Dale.
ugly. Yeah, I thought that was sincerely funny.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see an ugly Sonic game at some point.
Right on.
Whoa.
Boys, we have a first picture in the wild of PlayStation VR 2. This was a very stupid thing for Bit Planet Games to do, but they are a small indie studio out of Austin, Texas. I have no ill will towards them, but they posted a picture of what is probably their test kit on Twitter, which they deleted, but of course the internet never forgets. So there's a picture of it. I have it up on my screen. We don't get to really see very much of it, but it's the first time we're seeing it not being rendered, basically, or worn in some sort of shady video or whatever. So do we have any thoughts? Chris, we'll go to you first. Any thoughts on it? It looks pretty sleek. I mean, that's all of it. When I saw it, I was like, that's awesome, because that's all of it. What is it missing from the original PSVR? Of course, the processing box and 3 of the 4 cords. So it's just much smaller and it's quite enticing, I think. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it looks. It's funny because like I think it looks great, but I also feel like it looks exactly as I expected it to look. Like I feel like there wasn't much to do from the original PSVR other than to just slim it down and get rid of the fat, and it looks like that's exactly what they've done. Those controllers look sick though. Like I am very excited to get my hands on the controller specifically. Like the headset is almost. It's ironic because it's like very primary, but it's also like the most secondary thing to me because I have enough experience with VR to know, like, and especially with PSVR, when you're going from the PlayStation Move controllers to something like this, that is a huge leap. And there are certain, like, even like the Valve Index and with the original Vive Pro controllers, like I've used enough of these to know that looks pretty damn perfect as far as like what a VR controller should be, the form factor of it, where things are placed, and just the functionality of it and what they've been saying about it. I'm stoked about it, but also this is very clearly, even though this is a test image or a test kit, this is a ways away. So can't get too excited.
It's probably like my PS5 test kit is indistinguishable from a real PS5 until you turn it on.
Yeah.
So this is probably,
that's going to be what it looks like.
yeah, I think so. And we know that from the pictures already. I don't know. I'm pretty amped, Dustin. I want this thing, especially after talking to Brian over at PSVR Without Parole. It was such a great conversation with him on Sacred Symbols Plus, learning about all of the blind spots I have. I mean, I don't want to say I was embarrassed in doing the episode, but it's just like, he's like bringing up games. I'm like, what? And then you go and look at it and it's on the PlayStation Network. And I'm pretty up on things. So there's like this whole vertical that I just don't get, and I'm excited to immerse myself in it. What do you think about this machine now that we get to see it and these guys so clearly broke an NDA? I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah,
like, who are you? I don't know. Like, you're the one who's breaking the NDA? No offense, but all right. So what do you think?
I don't mean to rub salt in the wound of this broken NDA, but I do find it hilarious that someone responded to the tweet and said, I feel like this photo is probably violating some NDA fine print that you signed. And they responded and said, if we released this photo 6 months ago, you'd be right. And it's like the textbook definition of confidently incorrect, because it was shortly after they just deleted the photo. It's like, how don't you think like no one has ever seen this thing?
Yeah, no one's ever seen it. You're going to be the one that.
Yeah. So overall, though, I think I'm curious. There's a dial on the top of the device, which may be for adjusting is it IPD, inner pupillary? I don't know. It's to make the lenses further and closer together to kind of like match your eyeballs. And so maybe it's for that, maybe not. But overall, I'm just curious now that these are out there and games are being developed. I'm still thinking about when it's coming out. I think this year is out of the picture, but I would think that we are going to get full news about this year. Like by the end of this year, we should know when this thing's coming out, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think honestly, like something around like the Game Awards in like December, I think we might hear something.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to it. As long as they get the games right, get that first party support. Of course, the original PSVR technically had first party support with rigs and things like that, but it's not the right kind of game. Rigs was cool, but it wasn't the right kind of game. It wasn't going to be attractive to people. You need to get people in with the familiar but the unusual, I think. And I think Rigs was just too unusual. I think Call of Duty, I don't know why I said that. Call of the Mountain is going to be a more familiar style Robinson the Journey game, almost, with some combat and all that. I think that's more what people want. So I'm amped. Thanks for showing the picture, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Over at 4Gamer, I can't get my browser to translate it, so I'm just going back to Video Game Chronicle, because they're the ones that originally alerted everyone to this. So 4Gamer, of course, is a very well-known Japanese gaming site. Hidetaka Miyazaki, who of course is the longtime director of many a From Software game, told the site that they're in the final stages of development, quote unquote, with their next game, which has not been announced yet. And so the Video Game Chronicles article here notes that in a previous 2018 interview, Miyazaki had stated that since 2016, the studio had been working on 3.5 games. And that's in quotes. The half game was Destinée. So the 3.5, he says there are 3.5 lines that have been in the works since that time. 0.5 is Destinée, 1.0 is Sekiro, and the remaining 2 are unannounced titles. And then when he was asked at that time to elaborate, he said he couldn't. It's believed that this might be Armored Core 6. We don't really know. That leaked, by the way, months ago, and we talked about it on this podcast. You're both big From fans, guys, so I had to throw it over to you. And Dustin, I'll go to you first. What do you want? I mean, this is a possibility for something. I'm not a From guy, so I just don't get very excited about their stuff. I think that Armored Core is a safe bet, though. I don't know if that's what anyone wants, but I'm sure someone wants it. But after Elden Ring and after Blue Point doing reviving Demon Souls and all of that, I just think there's a certain kind of game people want from them, and I don't know that going back to the well is necessarily wise. However, there are a lot more eyes on them than ever, and so maybe people are just not familiar with those other franchises and will be. I think that was the idea behind releasing what Metal Wolf Chaos was, which was like the obscure 15-year-old game they did to kind of remind people that it exists. But Dustin, I'm curious, what do you make of this? FromSoft's next game is nearly done, and they're hiring for more.
Yeah, it seems like they have had. There's been some rumors about an Armored Core type of game, and to be honest, that's isn't really what I'm looking for. Just because I see From Software as this, they've taken me to these crazy, unbelievable worlds, whether it's Dark Souls or Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, that what I really want deep down is for them to take me somewhere completely new. But at the same time, Miyazaki is a developer and a director that has just earned my trust in that I believe in his vision. If he sees something in returning to this franchise in a new way, or maybe even just refining an old way, that there's a good chance I'm probably going to like it anyway. And so I am optimistic regardless. It's just amazing to me that From Software, they're such a incredible studio that they have multiple projects going on at the same time. They made Sekiro on the side at the same time as they were working on Elden Ring, and clearly they have this other game that's nearly complete that they were also working on during Elden Ring's development, which is just insane. The amount of output and quality at the same time.
Their headcount's not even 400, I don't think. So
Yeah.
I don't know how they're making all these games, but it's impressive.
Well, some of it, I know there was a big thing with Elden Ring that they reuse a lot of assets and stuff like that throughout their games. Not an incredible amount, but that just makes sense to me. It's like, if it's obviously you don't want to copy and paste your whole game, but if something's not broken, then why would you go and make a new version of it or whatever? But either way, just an incredible amount of talent and skill at that team. And so whatever they decide to do, I will check out no matter what.
Well, we haven't gotten an Armored Core game since Armored Core 5 came to PS3 in 2012. However, as far as I know, Miyazaki was the design director of Armored Core 4, so he has some sort of provenance with that series. And I kind of like this idea of them going back. And I've said before, I would love for them to go to Kingsfield again. Like, I think that would be hysterical if they made a Kingsfield game. And I think I said on the show that I got sucked down this like Kingsfield retrospective rabbit hole for a couple of days on YouTube, where I was just like, what is this guy? I just never even played this shit.
Oh, was that Mandalore or whatever the hell?
Maybe. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it was awesome. And I guess I didn't realize how rooted in something Demon Souls actually was. I know Demon Souls didn't just come out of nowhere, but I didn't realize that they had been running Kingsfield so consistently before Demon Souls came out. And of course, they would go between Kingsfield and Armored Core. So Armored Core could come back, and I think that is one of the games. But Dustin, I'm sorry, Chris, rather, I'm curious what you think about this and what you would want out of From Software. I think it's like when people ask what I would want out of a Mega Man game. It's like, I just want more Mega Man. And I wonder if that's for you too, or if you'd like to see them spread their wings and try something else, because they have slowed down quite a bit since Bloodborne came out. All they've released is Dark Souls. I mean, not all in quotes. Dark Souls 3 in 2016, Dresene in 2018, Sekiro in 2019, and then an Elden Ring 3 years later. So it's not like their output has been prolific. They might have quite a few things to say soon.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked and interested for whatever it is, because I don't have like a huge amount. I don't have a huge amount of history with FromSoft games. I obviously didn't play many of the Dark Souls. In fact, I just didn't really like them. I haven't tried them after Elden Ring. Maybe I'll come back to them with a different mindset. But I just have the way they design things and just the aesthetics of their games are interesting enough that I'm curious and interested in whatever it is they're going to do. If they're going to do an Armored Core type experience with a bit of a modern FromSoft twist to it, I think that could be very exciting. I've maintained for a long time that I think a sci-fi game from these guys would be amazing. Like, I just the idea of mixing the type of wonder and mystery that you see in something like Elden Ring, and putting that in a sci-fi setting where sci-fi is typically very over-explained. You know, there's a lot of things in sci-fi. It's like, here's a codec, and codecs are cool. You know, like, I like that stuff, but I do think it limits the amount of mystery that you can have. Like, by the time you're done with a sci-fi game, there's so much that's just spelled out for you. And I think FromSoft's approach to that type of genre could be really exciting, and that's something that I genuinely want to see. But I am curious enough about anything that they do that I'm probably going to be paying attention to whatever the hell this is.
I'm interested I want to see them publish their own stuff. They have obviously this well-worn relationship with Sony, and even better worn relationship with Bandai Namco. I want to see that, and Activision, obviously they did Sekiro with, right? They don't need to work with anyone anymore. I wonder what they would do on their own, or if they would be willing to risk it. They are so lean. It's just so shocking how few people actually work there. All right. I want to talk briefly about this next one. And Dustin, I slotted you to see if you had anything to say about this, but Star Ocean, The Divine Force, has a release date. So the new Star Ocean JRPG game will come to PS4 and PS5 on October 27th later this year. You can pre-order it now. Star Ocean, of course, is a long-time Tri-Ace developed JRPG series that began on Super Famicom in 1996. Actually, we never even got the original one, the original Star Ocean, until it came to PSP over 10 years later. But we did get Star Ocean, the second story, which was my introduction to the game or the series in 1999 on PS1. And these games have continued ever since. We haven't gotten a Star Ocean game since 2016's, what was that, Integrity and Faithlessness on PS3 and PS4. So it's been about 6 years. And Tri-Ace, of course, is best known for Star Ocean. That was their first game, but they also did a few others, including the original Valkyrie Profile and its sequel, which are pretty well regarded. In fact, Valkyrie Profile is going to probably be coming to PS4 and PS5 pretty soon. The horribly named Infinite Undiscovery, which I'll never forget. I wrote the strategy guide for that game. I hated that fucking name. Wasn't really into that game very much. And then more recently, they messed around a little bit with something like re-releasing their old game, Residents of Fate, and all the rest. Not the best developer, but certainly a talented developer. I'm curious, as a JRPG fan, are you interested in Star Ocean at all? We've brought it up in the past, but I'm wondering if you're gravitating towards it at all, especially because some of the games are now available on PS4. You can play them fairly easily, and I love the melding of fantasy and sci-fi, which is what Star Ocean is all about. It's almost a facsimile of Phantasy Star in some way. So what do you think of this?
This trailer definitely has me interested. I've never played a Star Ocean game before, ever. So I don't really know what to expect, but this one looks really interesting. I like, in particular, the trailer. There's like the character can kind of like glide, like it looks like almost like an Iron Man, like flying across different parts of the environment, which is cool. The combat kind of reminded me of a Tales game, which is cool. So yeah, and like you said, the mixing of fantasy, sci-fi, anime is all relevant to my interests for sure. So I'm curious though, just because I know that the thing that I'm always afraid of with some of these like different anime games is that some of them can be more on the budgety side and not necessarily polished or so good. But this one looks like it looks great to me from the trailer. So this is one that I'll probably check out reviews on in around launch and then decide from there if I'm going to hop in.
Right on. Yeah, I think I haven't played. I played First Departure and Second, whatever what the hell it was called. I think it might have been called Second Departure, which were the PSP remakes of the first and second one. And I think that was where I stopped, because it was around the same time Final Fantasy 1 and 2 also were remade and came to PSP. There was a lot of good shit at that time. PSP was awesome for that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Star Ocean, The Divine Force, PS3, PS4, October 27th. I was going to talk about this. I don't know if there's much to say about it. I guess it's more drawing attention to this back and forth. And I don't know if you guys had seen anything about this, but there's a back and forth going on between Quantic Lab, which is an external QA studio in the industry, and CD Projekt over, I guess, the QA work done on Cyberpunk 2077. Now, none of this is shocking, but the two sides are blaming each other. I don't know if we have to really go deep into it. I kind of wanted to just bring it to people's attention more. Does anyone have anything to add about this before I move on?
I don't believe it. Like,
yeah,
I just
explain. Give us a little synopsis if you want to talk about it.
To my understanding, they were saying that this QA team wasn't up to snuff, that it like wasn't, they were under the understanding that it was veteran QA people, and it wasn't. And first of all, I think that, so CD Projekt didn't like publicly throw these guys under the bus. Like that was a YouTuber that went out and said that they felt like this QA team did them dirty. The plain and simple. So since I'm a little bit light on the details, is that like, if you worked on the game, you had access to play it. If you put it in a PS4 and played it for 5 fucking minutes, you would know something wasn't right. Like, I don't know. It seems weird to be still like finger pointing about stuff when the problems are were so obvious that it just, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like frame rate alone. Come on.
You don't need a QA team to tell you really, really obvious things. And I think a QA team is like, they're supposed to tell you that's their job. Their entire purpose is to be like, hey, This is rough and it's broken. And it's not like a situation where two friends are talking about each other's creative output where it's like, I feel a little weird criticizing it because it's my friend. No, they're paid to do this. And CD Projekt Red has a lot more. They have a lot more to gain from obfuscating and pushing a game out before it's ready and ignoring certain QA than a QA team does in not being upfront about what's wrong with a game. To me, the risk involved between the two parties is just not equivalent, and I just don't understand. Because I think the article says something too about like this YouTube guy. He's like, he says something along the lines of, I've come across some documents that imply this. I'm like, where? What are you talking about? That's such an insane claim.
Yeah, well, maybe he's doing some journalism. I don't know, but I just think it's interesting because I agree with you. Like, you don't need a QA team to tell you that when you turn around in the game, everyone disappears.
Right.
It's not a QA ticket kind of item.
QA is for obscure things. That's why they jump in a corner 400 times and see if it breaks the geometry of the floor. Like, it's not. They're not meant for incredibly obvious things that the developer should already be aware of and are clearly aware of. Cyberpunk on PS4 is embarrassing at every level. There isn't a moment. There isn't a single full uninterrupted 10 seconds of that game running the way that any game is supposed to run. I don't know why. It speaks to a high level of ineptitude on CD Projekt's part if they needed QA to explain that to them. You know what I mean?
I concur. Totally. So, well, we'll see. I don't know. I got to play that game at some point on PS5, but I'm just not that eager to do it. That whole scenario left a bad taste in my mouth about CD Projekt and their games, but I'll get over it. All right. A few more things I want to get through. Just wanted to let everyone know, Skate 4. You can go now. You can just Google this. It's called the Skate Insider, and it's a playtesting sign up. And it says, "We told you we're back, and we're still working on it, but it's time for you to see what we've been up to. It's still early, but we want to get this right, and that means we want you to be a part of it." So, much like with Dead Space, I think they're getting ready to the remake. They're getting ready to show Skate 4's development granularly. I think they're going to start letting people play it. So go and sign up. You can sign up to become an EA playtester and give them feedback about Skate 4 if you'd like. Of course, Skate 3 came out in 2010. And we haven't seen the series ever since. This game, I assume, will be 2024-ish. So we'll see about that. So go check that out if you want. We've been talking a lot about Gamescom, which is coming up in Germany in, late August. And a lot of companies aren't going, including Sony, but some are. And Ubisoft revealed that from August 24th to 28th, they will be at Gamescom. So we will probably see more from them at that point, including a game that we're going to talk about later. And finally, I just wanted to bring up, before I kick back things to you guys, I thought this was interesting. The Canadian Broadcasting Company, CBC, wrote on their website, cbc.ca, "Game over. New language laws put Quebec's video game industry at risk, insiders say." So Quebec which is French speaking in Canada, is well known for its game development scene, which really spawned from Ubisoft, but is being guided also now by Electronic Arts with studios like Motive, and of course Sony's there now with studios like Haven. So it's a gold mine. However, there's a bill. It's called Bill 96, and the bill, if it passes, will do the following. It says, quote, "Bill 96 aims to strengthen Quebec's language laws with new and expanded rules that touch on everything from healthcare to the working language of businesses. One part of the law stipulates that immigrants who have been in Quebec for 6 months or more will only be able to access most government services in French." End quote. So the kind of Francophile nature of Quebec, which is well known, they want to kind of limit, or at least this bill intends to try to limit, the use of English, which of course is used elsewhere in Canada. However, it's worth noting that English, and one of the developers in the story said that they interviewed says so, English is the de facto language of the video game industry outside of Japan. It's just how, if you go to CD Projekt in Poland, they're speaking English, which is interesting but true. And I know people that work there. And you go to these different studios and they're functioning in English. So there's not much we need to discuss here, but this might affect the ability for foreign workers to work there. And that might be part of the effect. That might be part of a desirable effect. If I were in Quebec, I would prefer our own people working at these studios. But if you have to speak French to be able to work in Quebec, that might affect all of these studios moving forward. So something outside that we need to kind of keep an eye on. I was curious about this. This is by VGC. Dengeki Online reported. They talked to Naoki Yoshida. Dengeki Online, of course, is another well-known Famitsu-like publication in Japan. They talked to the producer of Final Fantasy XVI, and he says that since they're using medieval fantasy, they're using British accents in the game for their English voice acting. And it says, quote, but even though it's in English, we've been careful not to include any American accents. The decision was made to prevent American players from getting angry. I was looking forward to a medieval European fantasy, so why are there American accents? Therefore, all lines are recorded in British English, end quote. Dustin, what do you think of that? Final Fantasy 16, are we offended?
No, I think that yes, I'm 100%, somewhat disgusted, but at least it's fitting. It makes sense. You think of medieval type stuff, it fits the part. So I guess as long as it's not too obnoxious, if the little kid's like, "Oh, you're gonna cast a spell," like stuff like that, then I'm like, okay, like take it easy.
Firaga!
Yeah. So, but yeah, this is fine. As long as it's good. I wonder if they're doing that for the English voice acting, because sometimes I play these games in Japanese, but if the voice acting's good, I'll do it in, I'll play it in English. But I wonder if this is going to be one where it's like the canon version is to play it with the English voices.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
And then even, Japanese players would use subtitles, but I don't know. That's always the question.
That would be cool. That was like my idea that Metal Gear Solid 3 would have been most effective if everyone was speaking Russian in the game, which I stand by 100%. Would make a lot more sense. Okay. Chris, let's ask you about this next one. Fall Guys has gone free to play. We know from Mediatonic and Devolver Digital was the original publisher, but Epic, of course, is the publisher now. It's gone free to play under this new model on PS5, but of course came to PS4 in 2020, like I said. And is it going to receive a second wind? I'm curious what your feeling on this is, specifically because they revealed that they have 20 million players in the first 48 hours when the game went free to play, which is a massive number even for a popular free to play game to get 20 million players in the first 48 hours. Fall Guys is, pardon the pun, kind of seen to fall off a little bit compared to some of its contemporaries. It's still readily played. My nephews love it. But I'm wondering, do you think we'll see a Fall Guys bounce back in the free to play mode, or do you think this is just a bounce because it's free and people are interested and then they'll back out?
Yeah, I don't think it's. It's possible that it could bounce back to even higher than it was before, purely because it's so available and so freely available to anybody who would give it a try. It definitely incentivizes a lot more people to check it out, and I'm sure this is going to blow up on streams, especially because a lot of people are going to be like, "Hey, do you guys want to stream Fall Guys? It's free," and they're like, "Sure," and then that's going to make people want to play it. And I do think this is potentially a huge boon, and I do think it comes at a good point in time where they're doing a lot of cross promotional stuff. I think they're doing like a thing with Halo as well. I saw something like recently where they had like little Master Chiefs in it, and I was like, okay, cool. So they're doing that. I do feel like it has the potential to kind of explode again, and it is a game that's been around for a while, and it is pretty polished. Like I don't think I've ever seen videos about Fall Guys in the same way that I've seen videos about like No Man's Sky early on, or you know what I mean? Like I haven't seen, "Oh, this is a mess. How could they let this happen?" So I think it's probably in a good spot to become free to play. It's probably in a good spot to retain a lot of new players, and it's a great stream game. So I do think it has that going for it as well. I think it's a good social kind of experience. It's definitely a little bit more high. I don't want to say more high quality than Among Us, but there's definitely more going on. And Among Us is still huge. So I think, I think this is probably going to be huge again, at least for a while. These things always taper off eventually, but for the time being, I think Fall Guys is in a really, really, really healthy spot.
Yeah, it's hard to see because free to play is ostensibly good for any game. Just like, yeah, we're not charging anymore. Of course, that's going to be getting a bounce from that, but
Yeah.
we'll wait and see. I'm interested. I thought that was really fascinating when I saw that, because I just hadn't thought about Fall Guys as being a super relevant game anymore. And finally, Dustin, I wanted to throw this one over to you, because this was announced right before we began recording, that on July 21st on PS4, we will get Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp, which came to Switch, I believe, yes, in late 2021. And this is sort of a board game RPG spin-off of Danganronpa. I don't know very much about it. However, I think it's all of the students from the first 3 games. I could be mistaken on that. So I don't know if I need to... I haven't played the third one yet, so I don't know if I need to play them all before I play this, but I was amped because I liked the... I never finished it, but I liked that third-person shooter, Ultra Despair Girls, or whatever, on Vita. It was cute. I just got distracted and I never beat it, but... So I like this world. I love Danganronpa, and I know you do too. So what do you think about us getting Danganronpa S on PS4 in July?
I'll be honest, I'm not excited at all. This when it came out for Switch, I'm seeing that on this. So you posted the Push Square article. At the end, they put in a Nintendo Switch review on our sister site, Nintendo Life. A 5 out of 10 rating was awarded for the following whatever. So it's definitely like very much spin-off. I'm pretty sure even like it has characters from all of the Danganronpa games, so it doesn't even really, it's not like canon in any way. It's purely just like I don't want to say fanfic category. It's kind of
like a Musou, one of the Musous, right? Like where it's just a celebration.
Yeah, but boring from that review. So it's one of those things where it's like they keep, for the last few years we've been getting re-releases and ports of Danganronpa games, and they're kind of just feels like milking it at this point. And it's like a lot of that team moved on and is no longer there, like the minds behind Danganronpa. But I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see if they would ever do another game. Would be interesting with the context of the ending of the last one. But hey, I'd be down for it. It's just ridiculous enough. Go for it. And Danganronpa 3, Colin, you have to play it. Just once again, putting that out there.
I will.
I think it is. I maybe want to say it's my favorite of the 3, but I need to do a full. I want to do a full series replay. Actually, we should. That's content right there. Series replay with podcasts of. Well, weren't you replaying them recently, Colin?
I replayed and platinumed the first one. I want to say was it earlier this year or was it early last year? I think it was early last year. Yeah, I got the platinum January 18th, 2021. So that, and then I had moved on and started playing the second one again to try to platinum that, but then I just got distracted. So yeah, I want to platinum the second one first, and then I'll get to the third one eventually. It's nice that it's hanging out there, lingering out there for me to enjoy.
Yeah.
I liked this, before we get into what we're playing, I liked this from Ari Levi. I thought this was a funny one. He says, "Warm regards, my sacred slits. I've got one question for you. If you had the conspiratorial power that Kojima had on the industry for 1 month and embodied him, would you use that power for good or evil? Would you randomly tweet, 'I actually made The Last of Us,' and send fans into a frenzy, or would you simply try to figure out the method behind the madness?" Chris, I like this one because I fantasize about having that much power. Like, it's meaningless power, but it's power that is, you're able to manipulate an audience creatively into believing something or getting involved in something. And I think people get excited about Kojima partially for that reason. And I think he knows that. I think he knows that the Moby Dick stuff was really interesting and as an example, and people enjoy that. So I wish I was in a situation where you could just say something and anything you say is looked at reasonably so as a hint, because things you've said in the past have been hints. So what would you do if you could be Kojima? Would you utilize that power? I give him a lot of credit for actually not using it more.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. There's an insane amount of restraint that he employs that I don't think I have the strength to. I don't think I have the strength for that. I think I would definitely tweet numbers just completely out of context every so often. Like maybe like once every 2 months, I'll tweet like a random bunch of numbers and like some capital letters, some lowercase, and see if people like freak. See if anybody can draw some insane premise, like this is a date, and on this date, this game came out. Is he working on, you know? Is he working on Taz the Tasmanian Tiger 3?
Oh my God, that would be awesome.
Just
Taz the Tasmanian Tiger. Someone's gonna correct you.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing
that's right. No, you're right. Taz is the Looney Tune. But right. I think The
He's a demon. That was
Oh,
more,
yeah.
I don't know what the hell his situation was.
What's so fun
Cocaine.
about it? What's so fun about this type of power is that like the human brain just recognizes patterns even when there are none. So you could really just do anything, and as long as there's a presupposition that you're hinting at something, or just the idea that you would be hinting at something, people will find something. I think we all know of recent situations where that's been literally the case, but people are just starving for that kind of thing also. So it'd be kind of mean of you to do this, but it would be fun.
I think it would be fun too. Dustin, what would you do with that power?
Yeah, I mean, the key is there are entire communities built around theorizing Kojima stuff. One of them I've looked at is on Reddit, a subreddit called Never Be Game Over. And it was born out of this idea that there was a large section of Metal Gear Solid 5 that was cut out because of Konami or whatever, the relationship went sour, stuff like that. So people always theorize, like, what is the final missing link? Because it was advertised that Metal Gear Solid 5 was going to be the link between the early Metal Gear story and the newer Metal Gear story. And that ended up not really happening. So that's why you just got to put out like little things just to fuck with people. If you go, too hard at once, people are going to realize and catch on. But you just got to like, maybe you make your like the first letter of your tweet for like a month spell out something like Snake is back or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, people theorize whatever. But truly an incredible amount of power. It must be, he probably isn't bothered by it. There's probably so much it doesn't bother him. But even like stuff we say sometimes gets taken or looked at. Like I saw a comment recently, and this was silly, but there was an episode of Defining Duke Ultimate that Cog wasn't on, and someone was like, "Is Cog leaving the show?" I was like, "No." Like why would that be the case? Like, why would that be the way that we were like would do that? He's just gone. Or like if we say like, "Oh, we've got new content." Actually, anytime we talk about the possibilities of new content, instantly there's people like Nintendo show, and it's like, no, not really. So on his level, I'm sure like having every single thing you say be deconstructed down to the letter is probably highly annoying, but who knows? Maybe he enjoys it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my friends, let's get into what we're playing. Chris, your thing is empty here. I assume you're not playing anything because you've been
nothing
traveling.
that I haven't been playing extensively already. Like I've been dabbling in the new Destiny season, and it's a good season, but it's more Destiny, and I've been playing Yakuza, and I still really like it. And so I don't have anything new to say about the things that I'm playing. I have a little bit of a restricted access at the moment as well.
Fair enough.
But
when are you going home?
I think before we record the next show.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Dustin, let's kick it to you then, and we'll do so with John from Patreon. Of course, you can write into us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. It says, hello, CDC fam. By the time this episode comes to patrons, it will already be out, but I wanted to raise some awareness about the lack of discussion of Cuphead the Delicious Last Course. I've seen a surprising lack of coverage about this release, including on Sacred Symbols, which is surprising given that Dustin is such a big fan, and there was even a knockback episode about it. Cuphead is one of the most unique visual styles of any game, no doubt about it, and is one of the most tightly designed games I've ever played, and I absolutely adore it. As a recent recipient of the coveted Platinum Trophy, my poor thumbs, I feel it is my duty to stand up and say something in the hopes of raising awareness for its 6/30 release, so it's true. By the time this comes out, the Delicious Last Course will be out. And I just want to say before I throw it over to you, I think that this is their own fault. They took way, 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 way too long to get this out. This is exactly what I was saying about Shovel Knight, where Shovel Knight should have just gotten a sequel. Not all of this DLC now, meaning The Wanderer is doing way less than Shovel Knight on Kickstarter. And it's like, well, of course. I mean, so I'm feeling bad for them, but it looks awesome. And dude, I'm not good at the game. I know I always talk about it, but I'm obsessed with just the boss designs. I was watching the videos. This is one of those few games where I actually watch the trailers over and over again and like look at them because I'm so fascinated by them. It's just a beautiful, and what I've said in the past, Dustin, uncopyable, totally uncopyable. Yeah. That's what I love about it. Remember that one, we always make fun of that one game where we were back in the day that tried to like totally copy the game and then they disappeared because you just can't copy it. You just can't do it. And without just coming off totally ham-fisted and maybe dipping your paintbrush too much in someone else's paint. So I'm curious. You have it on the list, and I want to talk to you about that, and of course some other games as well. So take it away.
Well, I have to comment first on what John said, in that I'm sure we covered it, or probably before I was on the show, it was covered when it was announced. And I'm not 100% positive, but surely we talked about the release date when it was announced. And so what really are we supposed to say until it's out? And here we are, and it's out. And I'm sure I'll be talking about it this week and next week. And who knows? Maybe, I'm trying to think if anyone else on the team is going to play this. Maybe it's a nice little spoiler cast. Maybe not. I don't know. But either way, first of all, I saw this was released this morning, and I saw on Twitter Wario64 tweeting that it was out, and it was $8. I was like, holy shit, price error right off the bat. That sucks for them. And then I look, and no, that's the cost. It is $8 for this DLC, which is shocking to me, just in that I don't know the extent of how much is there, but clearly just even from the trailers, there were enough bosses and levels that I'm like, surely that's worth, it should have been at least 10, you would think, but no, it's just only $8 for this DLC, which I feel like is incredibly generous. And I have really not put very much time into it at all. It came out this morning, and so I bought it and hopped in and just like looked around. There's the new character, which is Miss Chalice, and she has a different moveset, which is really interesting just because Cuphead and Mugman play exactly the same way. She has like a double jump and this like dash ability that's slightly different. And so it kind of, I wanted to play as her initially, but it felt too weird. Like my muscle memory is too tuned to play it a certain way. So maybe at some point I will do that. But in the few levels that I checked out, I didn't beat any of them. I just kind of wanted to see what the starting lineup of bosses were. They were awesome. I mean, it's more Cuphead. They're not really reinventing anything, but that's not really the point of DLC.
Yeah.
They were extremely difficult. And I think what is cool still is that, yeah, it's a boss rush game, but in the bosses I played, there were still unique aspects of what you're supposed to do. The one I played was like 3 tiers. And so the boss variates between these 3 tiers and comes from different directions. And so you're hopping on these different levels. And so really got to be on your toes. So I'm really excited to dive into that over the next week or so. But other than that, the main game that I played over this past week was Resident Evil 2 Remake. Totally finished that up, both the Leon and the Claire run. And I got to say, this game is absolutely fantastic. One of the best, and probably would have been on my top 25 list if I had completed it for Sacred 200. So I'm happy that it made a spot on our list. And it's just, I'm curious now that I already have Resident Evil 3. It's coming in the mail tomorrow. So I'm going to hop right into that, which I know is kind of a step down in for some people. So I'm curious to see what that's all about. But overall, the only kind of thing that bothered me, and I'm trying to remember what you guys thought, is that once you complete one full run, so I played Leon first, you have the ability to do the second run, but it's specifically like you can do a normal or a second playthrough run, which is slightly different. And so they kind of give you some shortcuts as you play, which is kind of helpful. But at the same time, I felt like, because initially I think I did take one of the shortcuts to get through something faster, but then it's like, I don't have ammo, I don't have these weapons or whatever. And so I didn't feel like I was quite ready. It felt like it wasn't balanced quite right when I was doing that. So I ended up kind of just going back and doing all the stuff that they gave me a little bit of leeway to skip past, which I'm sure is there for speedrunners or people that, you know, are wanting to experience the story. But even then I'm like, man, this is still difficult. But overall, fantastic game. Few of the boss fights felt a little weird. There's this part where you have to get this, like, it's a big a shipping container, and you have to hit this button in order to knock the guy off the platform. Yeah. And it's so fucking annoying. Like, I understood what it wanted me to do. Like, you have to get the guy in the right spot and then hit the button at the right time. But it's not like your character's movement is so limited. There's no dodging. And I get it. That's the point of a survival horror game like this. You have limited movement, and that kind of adds to the difficulty. But when you get a very large boss involved, it kind of felt weird. But overall, it's great to see this series revived to the state that it's at now, where it's so, I think I've mentioned before, just thinking about Resident Evil 6 and what happened, like the decline of that series. People thought it was going to be basically dead, and they completely brought it back, and not only with Resident Evil 7, but these 2 remakes and then 8. And so I'm going to play 3, and then I'm kind of thinking about playing 5 as well, which I know is kind of mixed, but there's like supposed to be a good co-op mode. And they went and like made those all easily available on PlayStation 4. So I think I'm going to do that. And maybe also a Resident Evil 4 run as well. I just feel like I'm on this nice path. They're not too long of games, and now it's kind of a good time to do it. So we'll see what's up. I know, have you guys played Resident Evil 0? Is that one that's worth checking out?
Yeah, I like Resident Evil 0 on GameCube a lot. That game at the
also
time wasn't well liked, but I think it's a great game, personally.
That's also on PlayStation 4. I think the only one that might not be is Code Veronica, which I know a lot of people like as well.
Yeah, Code Veronica's not, I don't think. Yeah, 0 was ported. I loved Resident Evil 0 back in the day. I was such a GameCube nerd. I mean, it kind of spoke to me in that way, but yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah. The last thing, still trucking away at Ape Escape, and it's amazing that this game is still so playable. Like, you think of a lot of PS1 games, you kind of have to take the context of the time frame in it. And there's still some of that there. Like, there's moments where I'm like, what the fuck is this camera angle? And you can control it, but the way it controls the camera doesn't necessarily always make sense. But I just unlocked the RC car, which is like an awesome little gadget that you get to use and solve puzzles with and stuff like that. And I had a moment when I was playing this game where when you unlock Spectre coins, you get these mini games. And I unlocked the first mini game, which is this skiing game. And I was like, man, I have not thought about this skiing game for decades, literally since I first played it. And it was like the Ratatouille moment when the guy eats the food and he's a kid again. I was like, oh man, I remember playing the skiing game. It was awesome. And then the boxing one, I don't remember what the third one is, and I refuse to look it up because I know I will have that moment of revelation once again of like, oh, that's it. And so it's really fun to go back to some of these games that have been gone for so long.
For me, speaking of games that have been gone for so long, I've been playing Wild Arms, one of my very favorite games of all time. I haven't had very much time, honestly, in the last week to play. So we record Thursday, we publish Friday. So that Friday and Saturday after we recorded, I played probably another 15 hours or so of Ocarina of Time in preparation for Knockback. I ended up 100%ing the game with the exception of, so it's not quite 100%. I didn't get the 50 arrow upgrade because I'm just not very good at the horse archery shit. And then I just didn't want to do the ice arrows because I was just like, I just want to be done with this. That's like a very late game side quest. But otherwise, I got every heart piece, every skulltula, everything you can get in the game. And I really had a great time with it, digging it. I had a very constructive and positive knockback about one of the very best games of all time. So I was really looking forward to playing Wild Arms next. I've just been in an old school kind of mode. And actually, Lee Doherty wrote in and said, hi, CDC. So I recently tried Wild Arms on the PS Plus premium service after your praise for the game. I missed it back in the day. And I have to say, I'm enjoying it so far. Great pixel art, JRPG. So my simple question is, what other PS1 and 2 classics would you all like to see added to the service? Not the typical big hitter, but other hidden gems that could be discovered by a new generation of gamers. I want to get to that, but before we do, I want to just kind of back up and stay where we are right now, Lee, and say, I'm glad that you're playing Wild Arms and replaying it myself for the first time since college. So it's been almost 20 years since I played Wild Arms. It's so charming and exceptional. The music is amazing. The emotion is still there. There's something very sad and somber about it. You can really see the heavy Final Fantasy VI influence on the game as well. And, it's we're looking for like what's next, and I want to talk about what's next. But before we do, like what is now is a very small collection of PS1 games with trophies, and Wild Arms is definitely the standout of those games. And I'm really super happy that people have been playing it. I've been receiving some DMs of people trying it for the first time. There it is. It's I sometimes when I love a game, I worry about going back to it and being challenged, having my own memory of a challenge, and that happens pretty often, especially on Knockback, when a game is better or worse than you actually remember. this game is really just as good as I remember it. It is, but I must say, it is deeply nostalgic. Like, I feel like I need a good cry after playing Wild Arms and Ocarina of Time back to back. It's like, holy fuck. Because this is 1997, 1998, 8th grade, 9th grade, just hitting me right in the feels, remembering it so well. Wild Arms was a prelude basically to Final Fantasy VII, coming out a few months beforehand and before RPGs really took off on console in the West End. So it's like one of those last games that was made for a small audience. And I like Wild Arms a lot. I think it's wonderful. So I'm glad people are enjoying it. But what will come next? We'll get to that. We'll worry about that. But worry about what's right now. And what's right now is Wild Arms. All right, I wanted to bring something up really quick before we move on. Jeremy S. wrote in, said, Colin, I think it's time we finally hear you recognize what the trophy system really is, a loyalty program. It's a trivial system that's designed to coerce a user into playing and ultimately buying more on the platform through gamification. I feel like we have to respectfully put your feet to the fire here, as it's evident that you let it dictate what and even if you'll play a game, robbing yourself of potential experiences, and it actively betrays your enjoyment of experiences on other consoles, such as your recent Zelda playthrough on Switch and Halo playthrough on Xbox. As a game enthusiast and game creator, what do you have to say about the mental hurdle that you've allowed yourself to become a victim of? Thanks, and keep banging the birds. Thank you for writing in. Of course, a major reason why I hadn't replayed Wild Arms in a long time is because I want to earn trophies and I like them, but I want to kind of check this in a minute. I have actually, it's funny, I put this in from Jeremy in the document, and then later on when I was going through the rest of the inquiries, I had an inquiry that answered it perfectly, and I'm going to read it, but before I do, I want to say this to the audience. Let's stop worrying about what other people are playing and how they're playing games.
Yeah.
I think it just doesn't really matter. If my whole thing is I play only sports games, season modes and sports games, or I only play online shooters or whatever. Now, you might question my ability to do a show like this, and you should, but you shouldn't question my bona fides necessarily as a gamer. This reminds me a lot of a conversation I had during a morning editor scrum at IGN. We'd have like a morning meeting every morning with all the editors. And I remember, I won't say who it is, but it's someone people would know, saying to me, why do you people kind of talking about what they're playing. It's like, why are you playing this? Why aren't you playing that? Why do you worry about this? Why don't you do this? And I'm like, what the why don't you fucking worry about yourself and worry about what you want to play? And I'm going to worry about what I want to play. And so, Jeremy, I'm not saying it to you quite so forcefully, but robbing myself of experiences. I play more games than most of the people you guys probably listen to that do gaming podcasts, probably by far. And I'm the person who tells you to go hold my feet to the fire and see what I play. You can see exactly how deeply I've played games. And that's the relevance of it to me. You're saying with Zelda and Halo, the thing is that I still almost 100% did Zelda, and I played and enjoyed Halo. I still did those things. I didn't rob myself of any experiences. And what I would feel about more is robbing myself of experiences I really enjoy. Why do I do what I do? Not to placate your desires for me, but to placate my own. We were joking around before the show started, Dustin and I, in the Discord, because I asked him, someone wrote in and was like, is Dustin familiar with this game? This really seems like a Dustin game. And I messaged him. I'm like, do you give a fuck about this game at all? And he's like, no, not really. And I always make fun of people that recommend me Divinity Original Sin. They're like, Colin, you would love this. Such a Colin game. It's like, you don't know fucking anything about my gaming taste if you think that I want to play Divinity Original Sin. And yet that game is recommended to me over and over again. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't know why you would think I'd want to play this, because it's people projecting their own desires onto me. So I want to play games the way I want to play them. Chris wants to play games the way he wants to play them. Dustin wants to play games he wants to play them. And Alex English wrote into us on Patreon. And this is just serendipitous, because he answers one of the major reasons that I love trophies and why I insist on playing with them. He says, my slit is, the topic of Colin's trophy obsession is oft brought up with consternation, to use one of Colin's favorite words. Thank you. I'm not ashamed to admit that I even put more emphasis on trophies and completion in my game playing. However, I would like to posit an alternative and position this as a constructive and positive approach to gaming. Although I have always had a penchant for trophies and achievements in prior console generations, I had a habit of buying lots of games without thinking, playing them for short periods of time and shelving them, never to be completed. This was a time in my life in which I was not financially secure as I am today, and in short, I was wasting money and not seeing many games through to completion. About midway through the PS4 generation, I made a conscious choice to change my approach by making a concerted effort to platinum every game that I played. Putting these guardrails around my primary hobby forces me to be more thoughtful about the games that I am going to buy and play, and results in me getting as much mileage as possible out of my gaming catalog. Upon hearing the sweet chime of a platinum popping, it gives a very satisfying sense of completion, and I can then promptly delete the game from my console storage and replace it with something else. While there will always be games that I don't platinum due to length or difficulty, Red Dead Redemption 2 being an example, or games that I unexpectedly hate and don't finish, looking at you, Alan Wake Remastered, by and large, I finish everything that I play, and it is quite uncommon for me to play a game that I do not genuinely enjoy. What say you to the benefits of this approach, and the satisfaction achieved by seeing something through to completion? It may not be for everyone, but I am happy that trophies are a thing that exists as they significantly enhance my time playing games. Thank you for answering the question for me in part, Alex, for Jeremy, which is, I play games so much more deeply than I have ever played them. I play games so much longer and so much more thoughtfully than I've ever played them. Trophies have made me a smarter gamer, a more thorough gamer, and a more experienced gamer. You think I'm missing things, but in fact, I'm just not jumping around from situation to situation like Alex explained. I have so many games in fucking shrink wrap still. Many. So, and I don't buy games anymore, and that just goes to show you that I used to be that way too. So I hope that explains it to people, because people seem so concerned about this. And I don't really know why. Are you questioning my bona fides as a gamer because I do it? I think it bolsters them personally. Otherwise, it shouldn't really matter to you. It's not like Colin's sitting there scraping away at those shitty Christian games that come out for $1 every week. Doing that, go judge those people. For God's sake, don't judge me. Stand down. And finally, Austin Byram wrote in and said, "Hey guys, just wanted to shout out another Colin was right moment. Lately, I've been in a gaming slump. Most games I've tried just haven't been hitting the spot. In the latest PS Plus sale, I noticed Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark heavily discounted. On a whim, I bought it. Since then, I've been enamored with this game. Can I give it my game of the year for 2022? You can do whatever you want. That was my game of the year in 2019, I want to say. And it's fucking awesome. If you like Final Fantasy Tactics, go play Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark. It's still amazing. Glad people are still finding it. Tell them Colin sent you." And on this, let's get into the news, my friends. There's only a few items I want to get into. Although the first one I really got to throw over to you guys because I'm out of my depth, and I'm really curious what you think of it. Number one, as recently rumored, Sony has indeed shown off some new hardware, but it's not quite what you may have thought. Earlier indications were that Sony would have new headphones and monitors that would be associated with PlayStation, but not necessarily branded as such, and we now know that's true. Sony's new sub-brand is called INZONE, one word, all caps, and it's aimed most specifically at PC gamers, which PlayStation sees as a major vector of growth for its gaming and accessories business. Sony's own press release described INZONE as, quote, a new gaming gear brand for PC gamers that sharpens the senses and enhances gaming ability, ellipsis. This new brand embraces Sony's expertise as a pioneer in audiovisual technology, delivering features that will immerse gamers into the action with total focus, end quote. Here's a brief rundown on what's what. The INZONE M9 is a 27-inch 4K 144Hz monitor with 4K resolution and, quote, high contrast by full array local dimming, end quote. I have no idea what that means. It will cost $899.99 and will launch later this summer. What will also launch this summer is a lesser monitor, the INZONE M3, which is also 27 inches and runs in full HD, in quotes, at 240 hertz. The M3 is much cheaper at $529.99. A trio of headsets will also be available, the INZONE H9, H7, and H3. The H9 is the best of the bunch with 360-degree spatial sound, noise canceling, and ambient sound modes, and perhaps its greatest perk, 32 hours of battery life with only 10 minutes to fully charge. These headphones will cost between $99.99 and $299.99. Chris, I'm curious, what did you make of this INZONE announcement? I am really against splitting your brand up like this. I do not understand why you would not make this stuff PlayStation branded and try to make a PlayStation PC brand. I just don't get it. And now it's worth noting that the last time that they tried to make a TV, they did make a PlayStation TV. It was the 3D TV, probably 10 or 11 years ago, and it bombed. So they might be afraid of that, but I don't understand trying to get the PC gamer without just being like, we're PlayStation. We're PlayStation.
I think.
What do you think?
I think you're not wrong, but I do think you have to remember that this is Sony we're talking about, and Sony typically what happens is if they fuck up once, they never want to even go into that territory again. It's like that's nuclear grounds as far as they're concerned. Like, no PlayStation monitor, no. We'll make a sub. I think in its on some level it could be smarter to have PlayStation branded monitors, but at the same time I understand why they don't want to do that, because people get confused over really dumb things. And I remember even me when I was paying attention to the industry and had like, some level of understanding of even some of the more deeper layers of it. When the PlayStation TV came out, I had no fun. I had no idea what the hell that was. I still kind of don't, to be honest with you. I don't know what the hell the PS TV was. And I've heard it explained to me in numerous ways, but I still can't figure out like why I would ever need it. So I think their goal with this is just kind of like, hey, if they can make something that isn't confusing and isn't alienating, because that's another thing, because some people are like, oh, an Xbox branded monitor, like what the hell is that? Like you're more likely to appeal to PC gamers with like something with a name like INZONE or something that's just a little bit off, that's not affiliated with anything. There's a hipsterish quality to that in that audience that I think is pretty huge. But I don't know. These seem really good, but it's been a while since I've been in the market for a monitor or headphones in general, so I haven't really been looking. I couldn't tell you if these are priced appropriately or if they're competitively priced or if they're a good deal or not, especially because we haven't really been able to see how they perform, especially with the headphones. That's like a huge thing. Headphones always sound great on paper. And then you get them and you're like, oh my God. But this seems like, I think this is a smart move, actually. Like, I think this is a good idea on Sony's part. I do think, while splitting the brand up is potentially damaging, is in the sense it's not going to reach as many people, I do think it avoids confusion in a way that is pretty appealing. And the feature set on here is pretty cool. I don't like the stand for the monitors, though. I will say, like, the stand for the monitor bugs me a little bit. I don't know why. that weird like slash that goes like towards you from the back. It looks a little bizarre. It also kind of implies that you're not going to be able to tilt it as much. But I think this is cool.
Yeah, it's got like a weird, I was bringing up a picture. It looks like a little tripod kind of. Yeah, I don't really know what that is. What do you think, Dustin, of this INZONE, this weird announcement? I mean, the leakers like Tom Henderson did appropriately set expectations that they shouldn't expect anything PlayStation branded, and that's not going to be that exciting. But I understand what Chris is saying, but I don't know. I just feel like you want to unify your brand. I don't know what you gain from having all of these different sub brands, and INZONE is just a shit name. No offense, but that name sucks. It's a horrible name. You could have done so much better than that. INZONE? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree about that. The INZONE is dumb, but I think that the thought to, or the reasoning behind separating it from PlayStation, I think is actually an important and smart one, just because when people are going to go around and shop for headsets, if you're a PC gamer, if you see PlayStation in the branding, you're going probably to scroll on because you don't think that that's something that is designed for PC, or maybe not even work with PC in a full capacity. So I understand that there's the idea of maybe having some synergy with the brand there, but at the same time, I think it makes sense to keep it separate, just so people don't necessarily just skip over it from the PC perspective. As far as this monitor, to my understanding, it's actually pretty dang good because there's already reviews out for it. And one of the main things is that monitors in this class, usually in the 4K, high refresh rate, whatever, usually in this price range, the HDR is terrible. Like, I have a 1440p HDR, technically HDR monitor, but all the reviews I saw suggested, like, don't even turn on the HDR because it sucks. Like, it's barely even passable as HDR. And so with the full array local dimming, which basically means that it's only lighting up the parts of the monitor that it needs to in different ways. So that way, if there's like a dark section of your screen, it's not lighting it up as much in the background for better contrast. And so from what I'm looking at this review from a website, TechSpot, and basically for a 4K high refresh rate monitor of this class, to have something with full array local dimming under 1,000 is supposed to be pretty good. And so this is like a fantastic new option for people that are looking for a monitor that's high refresh rate HDR. $900-ish is actually pretty good. So the thing about having one be 1080p and one be 4K is kind of interesting, that there's no middle ground. I guess that super pro competitive gamers are still looking for 1080p monitors with super high refresh rates for competitive games where you can actually achieve that level of like 200 plus frames. But it's an interesting move, and clearly just shows that Sony as a whole, not just PlayStation, is interested in PC gaming and also interested in the competitive scene, as we've talked about with Evo. Like, I'm sure that they at Evo want to have people playing on these monitors and preferably using these headsets as well. I'm really curious about that super high-end $300 one. Probably not something I'll get, just because I prefer to use actual speakers when I can, but there's a huge market for high-end $300 headphones. And so if they've got a compelling product, then it could be, a hit. Who knows? I'm wondering if it works with Xbox too. Like, if you could just buy, that's the thing I always wonder is like,
Sure.
man, I just want to buy one headset that has all of the high-end features that works with everything, because I know that particularly certain, I'm trying to remember the brand my friend Brandon got. He had to buy like a separate base station that he like needs to resync between PlayStation and Xbox when he uses them. And it's so annoying. So this could be a good solution for that if it does indeed work for Xbox as intended.
We're going to see, I think, how this goes. Like, I have this confidence that, like you said, that there is this this group of people that want this sort of thing. I think it's important that Sony continues to tap into this. Of course, we talk about the $300 million they're anticipating from software this year, which is a 4 times increase year over year. So there's some, and this has nothing to do with it, but there is something there. I don't understand. The PlayStation brand is Sony's most powerful thing. Now, they might look at that and be like, well, you're just explaining why we don't want to necessarily put it on everything. But I'm of a different mind, I think. I'll be interested to see how these do. Number 2 is all Colin. In keeping with recent tradition, publisher/developer Capcom has announced an all-new Mega Man collection, and this one is a doozy. The Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Slated for launch on PlayStation 4 in 2023, Capcom will be wisely splitting the collection into 2 so-called volumes, which will split up the 10 Battle Network games. Of course, 4 of these 10 games are merely alternate versions, think Pokemon. And like seemingly all of the other Capcom collections, it's skipping PS5. The Battle Network games began on Game Boy Advance in 2001, and it represented the 4th major Mega Man sub-franchise after the core series, X, and Legends. Subsequent games came to GBA in 2002, 2003, and 2004, and jumped to Nintendo DS for 2 more releases in 2005 and 2006. All of these games are included in the Battle Network Legacy Collection, though its own sub-series spin-offs, such as the 2003 GameCube game Mega Man Battle Transmission, which was fucking so hard, and the 2004 GBA game Battle Chip Challenge, will not be included. Mega Man Star Force, which began on DS in 2007, ostensibly took Battle Network's place and itself ran for several games. Battle Network, which is a card battle type RPG, has long been anticipated as a natural place for Capcom's wide-ranging collections to go next. Mega Man X, and Mega Man Zero have all had their own collections, as have other Capcom series like Street Fighter, other fighting games, arcade games, Phoenix Wright, and much more. Zach Dalton wrote in and said, "Hey boys, mostly for Colin, but the other boys can chime in too. Can we get a shout out to Capcom for finally announcing a Mega Man Battle Network collection? This series, along with the accompanying anime, is what made me become a fan of Mega Man and led me to playing the classic games. I can't wait to play the game. Can't wait to play these games again and earn trophies in them this time around. I'm amped." 2023 is far away. I think this was revealed in a Nintendo showcase. And Capcom, I don't know what else to really say about them other than, again, they just seem to get it. And I think what's most interesting about them, perhaps, is they are kind of blowing their load when they don't need to. And I would be kind of scared of this if I were them. You can't do this again. I said this so many times, but you can't do this again. Once Battle Network Collection's released on PS4, it's over. I mean, you can't go back to the well and do it again. And I'm just surprised in a moment where Resident Evil is killing, where Monster Hunter is killing, where they have all of these things in the works, that they want to continue to release these collections. I'm loving it. But I don't really understand the strategy behind it, because you'd think you would want to keep this powder dry, but they're the ones that are doing it the most. I think Konami is probably in second place, and I can understand Konami's perspective a lot more than I can understand Capcom. So shout out to them. As far as my favorite Mega Man Battle Network game, I don't even know. I only played the first 3, and I don't remember the difference between them at all, to be honest. They're pretty similar. Those games, I want to say that there might have even been only like 10 months between the first and second game in Japan, something like that. So these games were coming out at a rapid clip. But GBA, that 2001, 2002, 2003 era, right into the clamshell era, the backlight era. Oh my God, good shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I love GBA. Did you guys play Mega Man Battle Network, either of you?
I did. I played a little bit of the first one. I didn't get super far into it because I think that was like an isometric game before I really understood how to appreciate them. So I would be really stoked to actually visit these again because I feel like I've really grown to appreciate that style of game in a way that I didn't at that time. So I'd be stoked to play this again.
Well, 2023. And I like that they're not even bothering with PS5 iterations, although to the point that might be what they're doing is they're like, oh, we'll release these again sometime. But I think it's more of an acknowledgement of saying, like, what is PS5 going to do for this? This is just the PS4 collection. It's fucking Game Boy Advance. It's going to be fine. We can literally run this game at 7 million frames a second and it'll run. So don't even sweat it. And I think so I like that. It's cool because some people are confused with the Street Fighter collection that came out recently, which I'm so tempted to get, or the fighting game collection that they released, which looks so good. People are like, why isn't this on PS5? And I'm like, who gives a shit? It's Street Fighter 2. It came out in 1991. Someone wrote in to Lilymo. I mean, it's cute, but they're like, I don't know which version to get. Should I get are there any upgrades for PC or whatever? And I'm like, dude, it's a 16-bit arcade shooter. What are you talking about? Play wherever you want. It's all good. All right. I'm just writing a note here. Okay, number 3. This one's interesting because this has been bubbling now. If recent territorial ratings board certifications are any indication, and if a well-known leaker's word can be trusted, Ubisoft's seemingly forever in development naval combat game Skull and Bones is finally coming out this year. Indeed, we can even reliably count on a specific release date, though publisher Ubisoft hasn't said anything as of yet. Tom Henderson notes it'll launch on November 8th. Website Eurogamer originally dug up information from the Xbox store pointing at this release date, and it was confirmed by the aforementioned Henderson. As the website notes, leaked tutorial footage from this past spring in part, notes in part, that players will, quote, start your journey as an underdog whose goal is to become the most infamous pirate to sail these waters, end quote. As such, pirates manage an infamy rating that's affected by their activities in the game, including in extensive multiplayer modes. Now, Skull and Bones is nearing vaporware territory, which makes its release later this year especially notable. It was first revealed at E3 in 2017, more than 5 years ago, and was slated for release on PlayStation 4 in 2018. Obviously, that never happened, with the game being delayed until 2019 and then effectively brought dark, apparently to completely rework it. Indeed, the genesis for this game harkens all the way back to the PlayStation 3 era, when Assassin's Creed 3 launched in 2011. That game contained naval combat that was led by Ubisoft Singapore, and which later came to further fruition in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, launched in 2013. Skull and Bones entered pre-production the following year. Oh, I didn't finish this. It's assumed. I don't know what I was going to say here, but
something was assumed.
Something was assumed. Oh, I know what it is. It's assumed that Ubisoft Singapore has been removed from the project. Ubisoft Singapore has done some games. They did that old Ubisoft TMNT Brawler remake from probably 2009 or 2010 that was on Xbox Live, and then it came to PS3 later. And they've done a lot of support work in Assassin's Creed, but clearly they were out of their depth with making a full game. I mean, otherwise this would have never happened. I mean, that level of delay indicates that the game was totally remade from the ground up. Not a great sign, but something that they believe in. Chris, I'm curious, are you interested in Skull and Bones?
I'm more curious about it than anything, just because if it does come out in November, that's a pretty sudden reemergence. You know, it almost gives the feeling of them just sort of, we gotta, you know, we really just get it out. It's been in here too long. There's that feeling in the air around this. And especially because I think recently, or not super recently, but earlier this year, I think April or early May, there were some leaks about it that kind of implied that the fundamental design elements of this game were kind of a disaster. I don't remember if they were confirmed or in any way, or if they were super verifiable, or if they were like by genuine like insiders. It's been a minute. Oh, and it's Tom Henderson. As I'm looking, yeah. So this is April 29th, May 1st. Skull and Bones combat fundamentals are a disaster. So like, that's not exactly, you know, it's not exactly glowing praise. It's possible that they might have ironed things out in the last month, and a half. But that sounds a bit optimistic. I'll be keeping an eye on this one. I do not have any intentions of buying this on release, or I wouldn't even be surprised if this launches in early access, which honestly would be the smart thing to do for when a game isn't ready, instead of damaging the reputation of the game on release and then leaving you with such little wiggle room. But I don't know. This game has, I mean, no pun intended, there's a lot of red flags with this pirate game.
Oh my God. Dustin, this seems to me to be a sunk cost fallacy in some point. Like you put no doubt 100 million plus into this game. I'm sure more than that. And you need to get it out, but do you get it out and ruin your reputation? It seems like Ubisoft is kind of sneaking a few games out, although that roller blading or roller derby game is actually that they kind of snuck out was actually supposed to be pretty good. So I don't know what's really going on. It is worth noting that Tom Henderson notes that in another story that Need for Speed is coming out November 4th, and Avatar from Ubisoft is apparently going to come out the 18th of November. So there are a couple other games floating in this space, but do you care about Skull and Bones, and will you play it?
Well, I guess it depends on what the game is now, because we could be seeing something completely different since it's been dark for so long. My question is, and I don't know, this might not be a fair comparison, but since Skull and Bones, now we have a very successful pirate game called Sea of Thieves. And obviously they're very different, but at the same time, I just wonder if the love of the naval combat from Assassin's Creed games, if that's kind of gone at this point. Assassin's Creed has moved on, and now we have this other game that kind of captured some of that. And so I don't really know, are there people out there that are like, man, I'm still so excited for Skull and Bones. You know what I mean? So this does definitely feel like a game that they're kind of pushing out of maybe some obligations, but who knows? Maybe this will reinvigorate that audience that loved that aspect of those Assassin's Creed games. But it's weird too, just that it's been dark for so long, and now it's going to seemingly come out this year. That's kind of a big to do, not very much on the marketing front as well, which leans towards the theory of it kind of just being pushed out.
Yeah, I also want to say, like, you guys might disagree with me, and this might start a firestorm in the
do it. Say it proudly.
I gotta say, man, the naval combat in Assassin's Creed is way overloved.
I agree.
It is fine. It is entirely okay. I don't. The idea that they would make an entire game based solely around that is baffling to me. I don't know why they would assume that was, because especially in Black Flag and even in 3, it was neat that was a part of it, because it shook up the Assassin's Creed formula, but also it was just another layer of that game that you could explore. It's like, oh, I can sail and I can fight and I can free roam on the ground and like parkour through the city and do all sorts of crazy. That was a really cool variety of gameplay options for a single player game. I thought that reasonable. I get it. I get why people like it. But the idea that people at Ubisoft were like, you know what, this is good enough for its own game from the get-go, to me is sincerely flawed at its core. And I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out in November.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I have that, the usual rule of the 5 years of inspiration where something inspires you, your game comes out 5 years later. They already missed that target. Unless you want to count it from Black Flag and not Assassin's Creed 3, then the 2018 original release date makes sense. But now they're twice as far away from that release date, so it just doesn't feel right anymore. Although Sea of Thieves doing its thing, but a different kind of game.
Very different, yeah.
We will see indeed. I am very interested to see what that game is all about. And finally, number 4, as is the case each month, we have a new round of PlayStation Plus freebies to reveal via the official PlayStation blog. For the uninitiated, if you're an active PS Plus subscriber at any of the 3 available levels, you get access to so-called free games each month, and the games swap month to month. The big game this month is the 2020 Toys for Bob developed PlayStation 4 3D platformer Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time, which came to PS5 in 2021. Both iterations of the game are available on PS Plus. Also available across PS4 and PS5 is 2021's multiplayer game Arcadegeddon, which is already in early access and which will receive a full release on July 5th. Finally available for PlayStation 4 only is the 2019 horror game Man of Medan, the first game in the supermassive developed Dark Pictures anthology, which has since continued with Little Hope and House of Ashes, and which will receive its fourth entry, The Devil in Me, later this year. All 3 games are available on PS Plus as of July 5th and will be removed on August 1st. Any takers for these games, Chris?
Oh, guys, play Crash Bandicoot 4 now. Like, it's for real. Like, that, it is such a fantastic single-player platformer. It's also so hard. Like, the completionist, if you're a completionist person, this game will murder you. Like, it is so difficult. But so good. A steal if you have PS Plus already. Like, go secure that. I do have Man of Medan, and have I played Arcade again? A lot of these games are blending together for me. Arcade-ageddon.
Arcade-ageddon, I think, is Ilphonic, right?
Yeah. Oh, so this is not the one I played. I was thinking of Destruction All-Stars. But I'll probably give this a shot just because I was kind of curious about it initially, and also there's not really much else to play right now outside of stuff in my backlog. So, oh no, wait a minute, I did play Arcade-ageddon. This was fine. I'm looking at the trailer now. Yeah, it's all right. Crash Bandicoot 4 is clearly the big one here.
Yeah, that's a nice one. And Man of Medan, nice little taste if you want to, although everyone's trying to get me not to play that one, but if you want to get a little taste of Dark Pictures anthology. Dustin, any for you here?
I think Man of Medan is worth checking out, especially if you have a subscription. It wasn't amazing, but you're able to play that through in an evening. So it's like one of those things, like, why not? But
yeah,
I mean, Crash Bandicoot 4 was excellent, and it just makes me think about how, I mean, Crash 4, excellent. I love Crash Bandicoot. I'm glad so glad this game came out, but it makes me still think about a new Spyro game that will never happen. We got the excellent remakes of Spyro 1, 2, and 3, and so I want a sequel to that traditional lineup, but I don't think that's going to happen based on what we know about Tony Hawk that we discussed last week. So, but overall, great month. So check them out.
Okay, let's get into 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to wrap this up over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. You submit your inquiries. We read 6 of them at the end of the show. And of course, you saw that they were interspersed through the rest of the show as well. And we'll begin with Josh W., who brings up something that comes up every so often, but I feel like we need to continue to educate on this. He says, "Hey boys, I had a question surrounding mock reviews that Colin mentioned last week. Does Sony outsource mock reviews to sites like IGN with heavy NDAs, or do they do it internally? I'd love to understand more how this happens, and if it is handled by Sony, are they more critical than the typical game site? Given how the discussion has been surrounding Sony games getting nailed harder on their sequels, I was curious if Sony or a third-party reviewer would factor that in." So mock reviews are really important in the AAA space, and they are basically an outside indication for the first time that a publisher gets from a professional about how their game is shaping up. So what ends up happening, because you asked, is it done by sites like IGN under NDA, or is it done by Sony itself? Neither. I think that people used to mock review games when they were at IGN back in the day. You weren't supposed to. It was before my time. Mock reviewing is incredibly lucrative. You can get $5,000, $10,000 easily for a mock review if you're a professional. And so that's like supposed to be outside criticism, right? So you don't want Sony itself to do. You don't want to have someone at Sony that just mock reviews their own games. They're probably a super fan and they're not going to give you an objective review. And I've often said that they mock reviewed The Last of Us at 8. So mock reviews are not always accurate. They're typically harsher. And the idea is to like put on the table for the developer and the publisher at a very late stage in development, maybe even when you're getting ready to go gold, like this is what an average critic will think of our game. So there are people that do it on the outside, and then there are firms that also do mock reviewing and are known for mock reviewing. And it's, again, a very lucrative thing. And if the thing that's kind of troubling is it's forecast. So you're right sometimes and you're wrong other times, but people trust certain mock reviewers or certain firms that tend to get it more right than not. And I know I don't want to out anyone because it's kind of a secretive world, but I know a few people that write mock reviews still. And I don't know if they're more or less important. I would assume they're just as important as they used to be. And obviously, like a company like ours would never mock review our games because we don't really need them. Also, our games are perfect. So I wanted to just have that out there for everyone.
I would assume that they're more important than they used to be. You know?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just based on the amount of money that goes into games now, I feel like it behooves you to have a really good or as accurate of an impression of how your game will come out as possible, compared to back in the day when people would just be like, "Oh, that cover looks cool. I'll buy that."
It's really, I don't know how useful it is for developers as much as it's useful for marketing and PR to kind of have a gauge on how, like, this is how you set up your embargo date. This is how you set up access. Should we send builds early? You don't want to you don't want to give people access to your 6.0 for 3 weeks to marinate on it. You might want to give them 3 days to marinate on it. That kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Derek Beek wrote in, said, "Howdy, fellow Shaft Shruggers." I don't even know what that means. "Last week when Chris was asking how NFTs could be skins and still be valuable in an online game, I immediately thought of Counter-Strike Go weapon skins. There are a finite amount of them, with slight variations making some worth more or less than others, even when they're visually nearly identical. And while most of them are worth less than $1, they do hold some sort of value to a group of people willing to pay for them. I can see the system working something like that. However, I personally hate those systems and find them incredibly obnoxious, so hopefully it doesn't succeed for all our sakes." This is just going to continue to come up, I think. A lot of people wrote in about this, about how it might work and what NFTs look like. And I just want to reiterate that I simply cannot wrap my mind around digital scarcity. It's hard for me to do. I understand that we grind in a role-playing game to get the powerful weapon, or you're in Destiny to try to get better gun drops and all that. And that's its own thing. But that's part of the metagame of playing the game. That's not about the scarcity on the market. That's about the scarcity to you. Monetizing that makes sense from some point of view, but I just don't think it's the same. It's a digital artifact. It's not physical. It's not real. I struggle with it. Chris, I'm curious. Do you see that this is the obvious way it's going to go? And do you see that it's going to be a net benefit for consumers, or is it just going to have, is there just going to be this stupid market for dollar gun skins? Is that the full benefit of the NFT technology? I just don't really get it. I just don't get it.
I think that is the future of it. I think it's just going, because he describes the way he describes this is ostensibly what an NFT is. You know what I mean? Like, what is really the difference between you own a digital item and you can sell it? What is the difference between that and things that we've had in certain PC games for years now? It's the same thing with the metaverse. It's like, oh, the metaverse is happening. It's like the metaverse has been here for like a good 7 years at least. We do all of our things through the internet, like everything. I get food. So I can order Taco Bell without speaking to a single person and not seeing anyone. It just shows up at my door because I click a couple buttons on my phone. That is ostensibly what the metaverse is. They came up with a new catchy tagline for it because they want to, Facebook and Meta wants to pretend like, they're really late to the party, but they came up with it first somehow. A lot of these companies do that, but like I do think this is the ultimate end of this technology. It's just like, oh, you have red on your assault rifle, and you're the only person who has red. Can I buy red for $3? No, actually, it's $400, and then the person will be like, okay. It's just like people ripping each other off. That's it. That's all it's gonna be. It's stupid.
That's the way I feel too. It's. I don't know. Dustin, do you have anything to add? I just can't. I get it. Like, I understand what people are saying. Yeah, there'll be this marketplace of rare, scarce digital goods. And I'm like, okay, so that's not new. And then you're going to just sell them for real money. That's also not new. Diablo 3 did that in other games. And so you're I'm just kind of confused. Like, so we can just verify it's on the blockchain, but that hasn't stopped a bajillion NFTs from getting stolen like every day. It just seems nonsensical. And I feel like people are trying to force a square peg into a round hole here. Like we in some way, like Chris said, we already have this. We already have a George. We don't need the blockchain to tell us that there's 50 of these guns. Like, why do we need? I don't know. I'm just rambling. What do you think?
So thinking about this, I thought of something after we recorded last week that kind of ties into this, that something I was directly involved with. And that was back in 2015-ish, a friend of mine told me about how he was using the Topps card trader, like Topps apps for their cards. And there was a Star Wars card trader app. He was telling me about how you could, if you sign up every day, you get credits and you could buy more credits and you can open up digital card packs. I'm like, well, this is stupid. Why would I want a digital collection of cards? He's like, but listen, if you don't want them, there is someone out there who does. So if you get free credits and open up the right cards, you can go on eBay and sell them. I thought, this is insane. So I looked into it and I ended up using like my iPhone and a few others to start doing this. And I made not like an insane amount of money, but I probably made somewhere between $500 and $1,000 from opening up digital cards. If I opened a rare, I would list it on eBay, which is technically was against Topps terms of service, and sell it.
Yeah, but what do you care?
Right. And so my friend Phil, who was really into this, just put all that money into account and eventually paid for like a week vacation in like Aruba or something, like some resort vacation that he did like thousands of dollars through using this app. And so my point overall is clearly there is this market. And I don't think that we are denying this, but clearly there is this market for digital goods, as stupid as it may seem to us. And I mean, honestly, a game skin would have more use than a digital card, because it's not like only you could see this card. You could look and see what was available in the different packs, but it wasn't tied to your account. So I wonder if maybe what makes sense for this is that people are doing this anyway and violating terms of service of different games if they're buying and selling digital goods. This enables them to do it in a more official way where they can skim some money off the top of each transaction of a digital good, right? So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's stupid to us for sure, and that's fine. But there are many people out there that are interested in digital goods that don't even do anything at all. And so companies are looking at that and seeing dollar signs, like why people are buying and selling stuff on eBay and they're just trading it on our app. Let's figure out a way that we can facilitate that and take some off the top of these transactions. So
yeah,
it makes sense when I think about it from that perspective, but it is one of those things that when you think about how gaming has changed over the years, and it does take away some of that pureness, like the idea of when you just bought a game, you got it. It's not like connected to this like full economy where people have figured out ways to min-max things in order to pay for vacations and stuff like that. And I mean, good. Like, I think that the fact my friend did that is one of the coolest things ever. Like he found a way to provide people with something they wanted at no cost and make money out of it. I mean, cool. More power to you. But
yeah,
clearly there is a dollar to be made. And so this is the direction we are going in. And there's probably no way around it. That's just how it is now.
I just, the thing that bugs me about it is that I feel like a lot of companies and a lot of even independent actors are kind of talking about this technology in new ways to make it sound really enticing to people who otherwise wouldn't be familiar with the fact that this is not new. You know what I mean? Like, cause I remember fucking around on Steam in like 2013 and selling those. They used to get, I don't know if this is a thing anymore because I haven't paid attention to it, but you used to get these cards that were like almost like quasi achievements that you could sell for real money on Steam. You could do this in 2013, 2014. You know, I was doing that. I think I paid for a couple games with it. Just based on selling achievement cards for like $5, $10, a couple like 45 cents, 93 cents. And so this just feels like a huge, like, hey, let's pretend like that never happened, and let's pretend like we just came up with this, and let's come up with new terms for it. You know what I mean? Let's come up with like a new way to describe it so that we can trick older people who are not in touch into investing a ton of money.
Definitely.
Which by the way, more power to you. You know, like I have no problem with people with millions upon millions of dollars getting scammed. Like I don't care. But I just feel like it's one of those things where it's like, especially when it gets into the arts category, where it's like, oh, it's like these bored apes are really fucking contributing to culture in like a positive way. I'm like, no, it's a huge scam, and that's fine. But that's what it is.
Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Yeah, Bored Ape.
Show me a more
Club.
punchable face than the Bored Ape.
Dude, did you see that Eminem and Snoop Dogg put out a song recently, and it was the music video is just them as bored apes?
So corny. I'm sorry. It's so corny.
It is so sad that that's like, of all the ways for Eminem and Snoop Dogg to finally collaborate on something, it's like a monkey's paw.
Yeah, it's weird. This is kind of a side note, but when I was at the convention this past weekend, it's kind of bleeding into physical games, where I heard a guy making a deal with another guy, and it was like some boxed mint copy of a game, and the guy was like, "Oh, this is a really nice piece here." Like, what? A nice, like this is some kind of, this box copy of Street Fighter is an artwork? Like, I get it, but it's weird. I mean, we're seeing the inflation of prices, whether it's digital goods, physical goods. It's like the internet has enabled people of niche hobbies to just, like, I don't want to say take advantage of each other, but in kind of, it is like, hey, I have this thing that you really want that I just happen to get, and now I'm selling it to make a profit. But I guess that's how it goes.
Yep.
Bootsy wrote into us on Patreon, says, "Hey CDC, first time writer here. We're all well aware of Sony's usual acquisition playbook. They spend years cultivating relationships and only acquire after value to their ecosystem is demonstrated. With that in mind, we've seen a dramatic acceleration in their relationship with Square Enix since 7 Remake. 3 big AAA games have since been locked down with no 7 Remake in sight for Xbox. That doesn't just happen. And with Jimbo insisting their acquisition spree is not yet finished, along with multiple insiders claiming Sony has their eye on Square, I frankly think the writing is on the wall that we are in the middle of that cultivating relationship phase of the process. What do you 3 think?" So it's worth, and thank you, Boots, for writing in, and welcome. It's worth noting that Sony has itself broken this mold recently with a few of its acquisitions because their needs are changing. I think it kind of started with Nix's, and then it kind of even got crazier from there. I think Haven was totally out of left field. I still do not understand what that was all about, especially because Jade Raymond just hasn't produced anything of value in so long, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll change now. But I bring this up because the Square Enix thing could be happening in the old mold. If you want to look at that situation and say, like, they're getting courted, that might be so. However, and Dustin, I'll go to you first. There's 2 things that confound me here about this. First of all, I do not want that to happen. Like, I just can't iterate enough how bad that would be. That would suck. Why does Sony has its own role-playing game franchises, including Wild Arms, including Legend of Legaia would be one of them. Legend of Dragoon and others. Like, just go do your own role-playing games. You don't need, okay, you want to have these third-party exclusives and these timed exclusives. That's one thing, but I don't want Square Enix in the Sony family. I mean, that's just the way I feel. I don't think that they necessarily totally make sense together. And the other thing, Dustin, that I think is kind of to this point is Nintendo has a vibrant relationship with Nintendo still. I don't know that Sony is getting an inordinate amount of attention. I think the inordinate amount of attention from Square comes from the money that Sony is willing to spend to nail down AAA games. And I think Nintendo is happy to just say, we'll just take some random ass shit from you. And that's fine. I mean, look at Triangle Strategy in all these games. That's a huge exclusive. I would argue that would be a much bigger exclusive for Nintendo than something like Crisis Core would be for PlayStation, should it have been exclusive. So I'm wondering if you feel, Bootsy's indications here, that Sony and Square might be square dancing.
It's certainly possible. To me, though, it's one that doesn't fully make sense, just in that I don't really see what the advantage of full ownership is, in that a lot of these big titles, they're seemingly locking down anyway. It's like, why buy the cow when you can get the milk? No, not for free, but for a...
You think that guy's still saying that in the meetings?
Yeah, someone out there is still saying it.
For people that don't know, a guy wrote into us because I say that sometimes on the show, and someone said that he had been using that just earnestly in meetings for like a year until someone told them what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's clear that Square still has a relationship with Microsoft. They're putting out the Crisis Core Reunion on Xbox as well.
Looks so good. Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah. But I just don't think that it's necessary for them to own them in order to secure these games, just because for the most part, people that are interested, or gamers that are interested in buying and playing Japanese games, and particularly playing Square games, are going to PlayStation anyway. And that's where they're going to sell the majority of the copies. And so I think when Sony comes to them with a deal, they're like, this is, I don't want to say free money, but it's really not hurting us very much to lock it in exclusively. And the thing too about Square is just to think that their business goes beyond just AAA console games. They have like a ton of mobile games, like you said, Colin, a bunch of stuff on Nintendo. They have, I think they even have like a card game and stuff. I think they have their hands in like figures and stuff. So there's a lot of other stuff that comes along with it. And maybe it would be a situation where Sony were to buy Square Enix and have them operate on the side, kind of like Xbox is doing with Bethesda. But again, I just don't really see what the big advantage is for something like that. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with like, if it would just be like, if they buy them, then that's a huge source of income across the board of all Square Enix stuff. But I think that they're better just locking down games when they see it. Again, not rooting for that type of thing, but that's just how the business works. That's how they can make their platform look more appealing, is to have those big Square Enix games only on PlayStation.
What do you think, Chris? Do you think Sony is courting Square Enix with these this move into, obviously, what's that shitty game, Forspoken? I don't want to call it a shitty game. We don't know. Forspoken.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know. That's not fair at all. Forspoken, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, and Final Fantasy 16, all PlayStation 5 games. So with PC. So what do you make of this? Do you think it's a courtship?
It does feel like an unusually high amount of collaborate. I think the thing that's weirdest about it is that Final Fantasy VII Remake was marketed as a timed exclusive, and it's still not out on Xbox. That to me is like the weirdest thing about all of this, because that doesn't typically happen unless things are in motion. I would say that I agree with you guys in the sense that like it wouldn't make a ton of sense, because there are a lot of ties to Nintendo that I think Square finds very valuable. But at the same time, if the Bethesda acquisition and Activision acquisition have taught me anything, it's that sometimes shit just happens and sometimes there's just not that good of a reason for it. I could see Square Enix becoming part of Sony in the same way that Bungie is, in the sense that they're like a separate vertical where they operate in the same way that they always have, where, you know, most of their stuff is on PlayStation, but they can still do business with Nintendo, and then Sony gets a cut, and that's good for them. I don't know how financially reasonable that would be for Sony, or whether or not they would really gain much of that, especially because they already have, again, so much exclusivity within, Final Fantasy specifically, which is, I think, their biggest export. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think that's what's happening. I just think that I think the Final Fantasy VII stuff is very weird, though. And I think that could potentially be a little bit of a canary in the coal mine.
They definitely reworded the deal. The deal is different now. You know, pray they don't alter it further.
But it's different to like a shocking dude. Like, it's been a while, man. Like that is very unusual.
Yeah, we're getting close to, or are we past 2 years? We're past 2 years now.
When was Final Fantasy? Was that
spring 2020? I think. I want to say I was still waiting for my house to be finished when that game came out. Could be wrong. And I beat it. That fall. So
I played it at PAX in March of 2020. Yeah. So it was shortly after that.
So they're twice as far away from where they're supposed to be. So clearly April. The deal is different. That is a canary in the coal mine. I think something else, though, is that like Tomb Raider and the studios went for so cheap. And there's two ways to look at that. You can look at that and be like, we're trying to get rid of dead weight. For instance, does Sony really want Tomb Raider? I would argue no. We have Uncharted. We have a better Tomb Raider, right? If you were Sony's perspective, you're like, we don't need a Tomb Raider. You know, we have the game that was inspired by Tomb Raider, and that inspires Tomb Raider now, and so on and so forth. And you look at those kinds of things, and you're like, are you shedding weight to make yourself more likely to be purchased? Because when people think of Square Enix, they think of the Japanese stuff mostly. Now, and now there is no real American stuff. Outriders and a couple other. I'm not American, but Western. Outriders is Polish, but so there could be something to it. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. I'm rooting against it, putting all my mystical energies into the ether to make sure that Square Enix is not purchased by anyone, because I think,
me too.
That would suck dick. I mean, if they were purchased by Nintendo, I would be crestfallen. But that's not a Nintendo. See, the thing is, we don't have to worry about that with Nintendo. They're not going to do that. There's just no need to do that. And I think it could be as easy as Square Enix saying, like, you know, Final Fantasy 16 is costing $200 million. You guys can get it for exclusively for 2 years if you cover the marketing and give us $75 million. You know, so it could literally be something like that. And why would you say no to that? I mean, you'd be insane to mitigate your costs like that. Say like no marketing budget, and we get 25% of our budget back without even releasing the game. Okay. And this game is going to sell asinine amount of copies, and you can't really blame Square for taking the money. So we'll see. Stu Dog wrote in and said, hey guys, something I don't really ever hear mentioned on this show is speedrunning. I personally don't speedrun games myself, but watching what some of these people can do is just fascinating. Just recently, Mario 64 speedrunner Bubzia completed a full 120-star speedrun of Super Mario 64 in under 11 hours and 30 minutes, all while blindfolded. Think about how insane that is. Some are saying this is one of the most impressive accomplishments in speedrunning history. Do any of you all dabble in watching speedruns in your spare time? Thanks and take care. I must say, and Dustin, we'll go to you first. I do get sucked into the speedrunning hole every once in a while where I watch a little bit. But generally speaking, I'm not really, there's this whole avenue of gaming that I'm not really into, which is like the speedrunning, and then how that also gets into breaking games and blowing them open and no clipping and getting out of the environments. And that's cool as shit, but that's not why I play games. And so I don't really give a fuck how quick you can beat a game. It's more interesting. Like the 100%ing games is even more interesting. Like they did that blindfolded. I mean, that's insane. I don't even think I can get 120 stars in Mario 64 anymore, not blindfolded. Although when I was a kid, I could do it. So I'm wondering, do you care about the speedrunning aspect of gaming, and are you into it? And what do you think about this? That sounds so incredible, just because I can imagine playing a 2D game blindfolded. I can imagine that. I would never be able to do it, but I could imagine you would know the game well enough. It's kind of just like it's a conveyor belt, and you just have to know it, right? But in a 3D space where the conveyor belt turns into, even on the N64, 16 different directions, it's like, I don't know, man. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm a passive observer occasionally of speedrunning, and it's a cool thing to see, especially when these big landmark things happen. It's cool, and it's definitely an interesting thing to see. But I think that I like to watch more. Like, you can find YouTube videos that like explain the process of different speedruns that are really cool as well. And outside of that, there's a video I looked it up to shout it out. It's from Carl Jobst on YouTube, and he has a video called The Greatest Feat in Video Game History. And it's not a speed run, but it's about a Dark Souls no-hit run and how that evolved, where it started, where it's like someone beat Demon Souls without a hit. And it's like, this is crazy. And then someone beat Dark Souls with no hit. But then the idea was like, can you beat Demon Souls and then Dark Souls back to back and not get hit?
Right, it's insanity
the entire time.
It's insanity.
But then the end of the video, I mean, spoiler, is someone beat, before Elden Ring, every From Software post Demon Souls game, no hit, like in a row. And you just got to think about the mental ability, because like you think about, okay,
autism, let's just call it what it is.
Think about like the fact that, first of all, it's blindfolded and a speed run, but it's 12 hours. I can't do anything for 12 hours at all, let alone be blindfolded and speed run a game. That's just insanity. So it's a cool community. And what's the thing that they do every year? The Awesome Games Done Quick.
Oh yeah,
is always something that I'll turn on here and there when it happens.
What do you think, Chris? Are you into the speedrunning scene?
Yeah, a little bit more casually, like I every now and then something crazy will happen, or I'm I'm more enamored with these flashes in the pans of like not necessarily speed runs, but I'm sure you guys have probably seen this clip of two people playing like Street Fighter and they mimic each other exactly, and it's like they do exactly the same moves by sheer chance. And the whole match is like incredible, like the exact same moves, and they're freaking out the whole time. Things like that really get a kick out of me. But I think speedrunning is, especially in older stuff like Mario 64, is like super impressive to me because that's ostensibly the birth of tech skill, like in competitive games. Like anything that you do in a competitive game to get the edge of, like just little things like crouch jumping so you don't have to waste the time climbing. And that's speedrunner mindset. And I get into a speedrunner mindset when I'm playing competitive games, but like for whatever reason, when I'm like single player, like it has no interest to me. Like I don't have an interest in breaking through the game or like glitching through a wall and getting to the end of a level. Every now and again, just to see if it works, I'll try that stuff. And I do think that boundary break stuff on YouTube is really cool. Especially when they go into really old games, like when you see the original Crash Bandicoot and how they got away with rendering something that looks that good on a PS1, and how it's almost like a Cyberpunk situation, except on purpose, where everything behind the character disappears entirely, so that all of the rendering can focus on the polygons in front of you. I think stuff like that's really, really interesting to learn about, and I think looking at that stuff helps you know a lot more about games, and especially when stuff goes wrong. When you play a game like Cyberpunk and you're like, oh, I've seen that before. That's this. And that's why that happens, because it's saving on memory here, because that would be a lot to render. And it has the potential to be very informative, speedruns and boundary breaking and stuff like that. But I don't engage in it much anymore. I think back when I was a kid, when I had endless amounts of time, I would spend a lot of time trying to break things. But now I just try to enjoy whatever the hell they make. I'm not even really much into mods anymore, like I used to be, where I'm like, I want to make Skyrim look incredible. But now I'm like, I'll take whatever it is. I'm too, I'm tired.
Yeah, you're too tired. You can't worry about all that.
Nah.
I think the cool thing about gaming, and like I was saying, joking around about the autism before, is like you have to have this almost Rain Man like focus on something to be that good at it. And I just don't have that level of focus, and I don't have that level of skill in anything. Like I just don't. I'm pretty good at some stuff, but I'm not like a master of anything like that. And I don't think I've ever played a game at that level in my entire life. I play some games really impressively, like 2D games, but when you watch a Mega Man speedrun and then you watch me play Mega Man, you know that both of us are good, but one of us understands the game a lot better. Even though I can play Mega Man basically in my head, I can get through these stages. But it's just you're right. It's a totally different thing. And I think I started messing around with it most when Mega Man Legacy Collection came out, because there's a lot of those speedrunning kind of like time trials. And I'm like, man, this sucks. Like I can't play like this. It's to me, there's an elegance to playing, not necessarily quickly, but not getting hit and not doing all that, which is more my style. And so to Dustin's point, like the no hit stuff, I think is actually even more fascinating to me, although I couldn't do that either.
I gotta say though, man, like I don't think I know any game. I know a lot of games really, really well. Like I Crash Team Racing, I know like the back of my hand. I could not play that blindfolded. No way in hell. Like I don't even understand how that would be possible.
There's just too many in a 3D space. It's unthinkable. It's just too many things that can happen. Like think about if you're in a 3D space and there's one enemy and the enemy spawns in a certain XY axis and then can go anywhere. So that just is a multiplication of order of magnitudes that you just have to deal with that one enemy. You don't know where it's going to even be. I find that fascinating. So yeah, to be able to do that is incredible. But that's like a full-time job. I have other things to do with my life. All right. Adam Kelm wrote in and said, "What's up, my Slittas? I feel like live service games are starting to slowly spoil gaming for me. Having 2 young kids, I already have limited gaming time, but for the last couple of years, anytime I sit down to play a story-driven game, I instead finding myself just turning on Destiny 2 or Rocket League because I can just turn my brain off and not have to focus. Plus, there is a fear of missing the seasonal content and falling behind my friends. It took me over a year to beat The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm still only 25% through Forbidden West, even though I bought it on release day. Maybe it's just me, but have any of you dealt with this before, and how did you manage to break the hold the live service games had over you?" I'm curious what you guys think of this, since you both play live service games. I don't. Chris, let's go to you first. How are you able to balance the ease of the live service, like getting into the experiences. Because I understand what he's saying. You have to kind of sit down. You're playing a single player game. You sit down, kind of got to get in the mood. You got to catch up. You boot it up. You figure out what you're doing, and you go along. There's nothing really dragging you forward except for your own initiative. But in these other games, they're kind of moving on their own inertia without you. And so you either jump on or jump off. And I can totally understand why that would be attractive and how that can keep you from playing the other games. So how do you find that balance?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I kind of jump in and out. I don't think I have this problem. I feel like when I play a single player game, if I even start it in the first place, it's because I'm interested in it. Like it's and Destiny and other live service games, I don't know if I play live service games for the reason that they appeal to most people, because I don't really play live service games. Halo, I guess, is a live service, and Destiny is as well. But I play them because they're really competent shooters, and I enjoy playing them. Oh, cool. I'll log in, and there happens to be a thing this week. I haven't been paying attention. I'll play through it. Or if like my friends are excited about something coming up, I'll be like, yeah, I'll jump on. But I don't really care about progression systems. I don't care about seasonal activities, at least from a game, from a new mode or whatever. Like whatever, it's not. That's not the thing that drives me into them, because I think I'm more of a shooter person than I am a live service person. So I don't know if I can really even answer this, because maybe I'm just the part of the live service games that I play. It has nothing to do with the live service aspect of it. So I just feel like it's almost the same as the reason that I play anything. It's because I like the way it plays. I'm interested in the story. My friends play it. I don't know. I'm curious as to what Dustin has to say, because I feel like he's delved into very specific ones that I haven't.
So for me, it has to do with, I'm not the type of person that can play the same game forever. Like I know,
Right.
friend of the show, Jimmy Champagne, has never left Destiny ever. He's always on it. He's playing every new piece of content, and he's always there, and he loves that. And I've always thought that that's cool to be able to be that involved, that you know it in and out, and I don't know if it's, I don't have that kind of attention span. Like there's been long stretches where I played a lot of Destiny and a lot of Destiny 2, but it gets to a point where I'm just kind of good for a bit. And then I go off and I either play other games, or I find a new live service to dabble in, though more and more I find myself not being able to commit to anything like that. But I think part of it's just letting go and acknowledging that these games are never ending. So you either are fully committed all the time, or you accept the fact that you can come and go, and that's okay. You don't necessarily need to see everything, and that's fine, but that won't be fine for other people. So you kind of got to feel it out. Especially, in Adam's case, having 2 kids and not having a lot of time necessarily to play games. It's difficult, because you got to pick and choose what you want to put time into. Time is a valuable commodity. And
Definitely.
so you gotta make choices. And so the thing that I will say is that it sounds like, for Adam's perspective, is that his friends still being very involved is a big aspect, and you don't want to necessarily lose out on that time playing games together, or fall behind or let them down or whatever. And that's a big element as well. And that's also just what you're looking for in a game. Some people are really looking for that social element, and sometimes it's purely about that, and the game is secondary, and that's cool as well. But obviously there are choices to be made. There will be many more live service games, and for me right now, the one that I'm just dangerously on the edge of is Final Fantasy XIV. And I've tried it before, and I didn't really give it a full chance because it's just so overwhelming right off the bat. But at the same time, it's difficult to dive in when it's like, well, there's that, which is 1,000,000 hours, and there's constantly new games coming out that I want to play, and there's 1,000,000 old games I want to play. And so sometimes the easiest decision is to just not play them at all. And just because we're never going to be in a case where there's nothing to play, or there's something that, man, I really wish I had this long live service game or something like that. So it really comes down to your personal priorities. Got to make a choice.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not involved in these live service games, so I just don't have to worry about it. I have my own problems in the trophy world. All right, the final topic is a political one. However, a lot of people wrote in about it, so I wanted to acknowledge it and put it at the end of the show so you guys can skip it if you want and just shut the show off because we're basically done after this. However, the Snack Squatch wrote in and said, hey guys, why are Sony studios making political posts on social media? By now we've heard of the overturn of Roe versus Wade. I find it very bizarre that video game studios feel the need to speak out on this when it has nothing to do with what they ultimately do, make video games. I find it pretty wrong that these companies can take a stance on one side whenever there's employees that have different views. People have gotten fired for making statements about being and supporting pro-life, but is it okay for companies to be pro-choice and represent their entire company? Many heads of companies were posting their donation amounts to supporting organizations that allow pro-choice actions. If individual people want to do that, fine by them, but when a company is making a statement as a whole, it's really hard for me to continue buying games from them when I do not want any of my money going towards things I don't support. People were losing it over Jim Ryan's statement a few months ago, but he's 100% right. Everyone has different viewpoints and they should all be respected. Thanks for all you do. So this is, and we obviously don't have to get into the politics of Roe versus Wade itself. It has nothing to do with us. But when I saw this, because what he's saying is that when Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, I think it's something like 9 or 10 developers that Sony owns all tweeted out over the day their own statements. I read this as a coup in some way, right? Like they were doing it. I don't want to say coup. That's not the right term. They went rogue, knowing that there was nothing that Sony could do to them. And they're right. Sony's not going to do anything to any of them. But I don't think it was authorized by Sony. It seems like something that was either started on the developer side or it was a domino effect where 1 or 2 developers posted and then everyone's like, we're going to do it too. And we're going to do it too. And everyone's kind of talking inside. But I don't think it was Sony endorsed. I think people have to kind of divorce themselves, Chris, from this idea that you can control all of where your money goes and then how the people that get your money spend it and all that. I've had people in the past be like, well, I don't want to be a patron anymore because Colin spends his money on whatever, and it's like, that's weird, but okay. I mean, and then there were people when I left Kind of Funny being like, fuck Colin. Colin doesn't get any kind of my money from Kind of Funny anymore. It's like, actually, Kind of Funny was paying me until 2020. So yeah, I did, So it's like, it doesn't quite work out so easily and so neatly.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can have your own points of view, but I don't know that you can get too far from the source with it. It's like, it's how I feel about Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A and these companies that are somewhat controversial in Blue America because they donate to pro-life causes and anti-gay marriage causes or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, man. I can't get into the weeds with this. It's like you just can't have that level of, well, you can have that level of control over where money goes. I just don't know how you spend your money if that's the case. So I understand people being against the company speaking out. Definitely doesn't represent everyone's viewpoints at these companies. However, a majority of Americans do support some abortion, some right to abortion. I think that's what they're kind of expressing. And I think that's okay because I think in a social and political theater like games, the games will speak in a political way sometimes. The people that make them are political and they can say what they need to say. My one thing though, and I'm sorry, Chris, I'll throw it over to you now, is I will say that I find it conspicuous that these companies never take positions that will cost them anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not once. And if you want to be extra kind of sardonic about it, it's like, well, yeah, of course these companies want to support your right to abortion. It's way cheaper for them for you to have an abortion, even if they pay for it, than for you to have a kid. So you can even go that far down the rabbit hole if you want. And the point is that I don't think you can really go far that far down the rabbit hole any more than you can necessarily go far down the rabbit hole of how a person spends their money. So I don't think, like, we don't have a position as a company on Roe versus Wade. I assume everyone that works at the company has a position on Roe versus Wade. You can espouse those views. I don't care what those views are, but we're not going to foist them on others as a company. And I understand people's discomfort with that. And what I said on Discord was that the developers saying that gave off very powerful, please leave this card on your bed if you want us to change the sheets at a hotel energy. And what I mean by that is, like, the hotel doesn't give a fuck about the environment. They want you to leave the card on the thing because they don't want to do your wash. And they'll say that they don't want to do your wash because they want to be green, but really they don't want to pay for it. So they're going to give you the option to do the right thing, And so, like, you fall down this this hole of corporatism, and I just think it's all so disingenuous, just like the Pride stuff. You know, it's July 1st, boom, gone. No more gay pride flag.
Yeah.
You know, so what do you make of this kind of the government, Sony's studios being kind of outspoken?
Yeah, man, where do I even begin? I feel like there's a level of cynicism that I feel, in the sense that, of course, this is happening now when it's a lot more safe. Like, it'd be one thing if this was the 90s and this was a lot more split than it was, and these companies were coming out anyway, and I could be like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like, I think I appreciate that, because that takes a level of putting your money where your mouth is in that case. And I always respect people for standing up for what they believe in. I respect companies for doing it, even like, Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, fucking whatever, do what you want to do. Like, I personally don't give a shit. Like, I don't love Chick-fil-A, but I've had it, and I've definitely shopped at Hobby Lobby at least a couple times. It's like, it's not the biggest deal to me, because in my opinion, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, your money will never be clean. Like, there's no way to really, like, oh, I'm going to live my entire life and my money will never go to anything I don't 100% morally support. That's like a complete fiction. That's a fantasy world, and you're better off divorcing yourself from that. So there's a cynicism in that sense. But at the same time, like, I don't know, this whole thing is insane. It's a crazy thing that's happened. Like, I think this is kind of the argument that everybody was like opposing, that like, oh, they would know that would know that's not going to happen. And then of course it did. So I do think there's reason for companies to be like, even if they don't have anything to do with this, I think it's a big enough issue that I would expect a lot of companies to say something about it, especially if they're dealing with employees who, if you're against it, that's fine. That's just something that you don't support. But if you are for it and it's necessary for you, that is infringing on your ability. It's the difference between having an opinion about something that doesn't affect you and having an opinion about something that sincerely does. So I could see why they might want to go to bat for people who are a little bit more on the defensive right now. But if I was running a company, I don't know if I would get in the weeds with this stuff. I feel like I would have my own personal opinion, and I'll tweet it out. I'll argue with people all day, like fucking whatever. But if I had my own company, I don't know if I'd be like, this company feels this way, because it's not true. It's a lie. There's clearly, even if it's like 5% of the staff, that's still 5% of your staff that disagrees with your message. So you can't say this company supports this or this company feels this way, because it's inherently false, because a company is a conglomerate of many different opinions. Corporations and companies are nebulous. Also, I feel like it weirdly contributes to the idea that corporations are people, which I hate. And they get so many exemptions because of that. And I think so much of everything that's wrong right now is because corporations have so many rights that people don't have. So that they're treated like, hey, it's me, your friend, the corporation. I agree with you. Like, it feels annoying as much as I respect the opinion. But I don't know. It's a very weird situation.
Do you have anything to add, Dustin, before we go?
I think Chris put it really well. It's a situation where if Last Stand was to make, like, let's say it's something stupid, like Last Stand made the official statement that the absolute best food is chicken nuggets or something. And I'm like, but that doesn't represent my opinion, but I work here. But you know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Obviously, it's like, that's totally a mundane example, but
yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't like this idea of companies, like Chris said. It's like, obviously there are people that work at Sony that are pro-life or not pro-choice that don't necessarily align with that, but they kind of just are like, well, this is the company I work for. And it works on the other side too, where I'm sure that there's people at Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby that don't agree with the overall statements of the corporation. And so
100%.
on both sides, I'm kind of like, why even do that? Like, you're selling arts and crafts supplies. If the money that the people at the top profit, if they want to do that, you give money wherever they want. Sure, that's their prerogative. But there is a lot of virtue signaling from corporations where, like Chris talked about, where it's like
risk-free virtual signaling, by the way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the pride flags. We were at Shake Shack in Philadelphia, and we noticed they had a pride flag out with their company logo. And just as you said, it had the creases on it, like plain as day, all like still starchy. And Ben pointed it out, and he's like, "Hey, look, just like we said." I was like, "Man,
it's
really embarrassing. Iron it out at least. Like,
yeah, I know.
Don't make it obvious."
They had really good commentary on The Boys. I don't know if you guys have been watching The Boys, but there's like a fantastic little scene about that stuff, about like the corporatization of just like how it's all just marketing now. I feel like Pride has gone through what Christmas went through, but in like a real like speed run, like, oh, hey, it's a holiday about love and family. And now it's like, get to Sears to get your fridge, now it's like, it took like a couple years for Pride to be about like, hey, this Vaseline that's Pride branded is like $4 more because it's got Pride colors on it.
Yeah. There's a whole Pride section at Target where you can get your Pride merchandise and stuff like that. And I'm like, this just,
and this is, I know people probably get annoyed.
It's just so
it's funny. It's and that's the thing. It's like, I know people kind of get annoyed with me because sometimes I'll talk about capitalism as if it's like, but this is what this is. This is like, hey, this is a marketably safe opinion to have. And even if it might, I don't think most of the people at these companies are lying, by the way. I do think they are pro-choice for the most part. But it is like, it is the convenience of it where it's like, yeah, you're being honest, but you're also being honest in a time where it's really safe to be honest, in a time where it's really profitable to be honest. It's kind of like when, Hillary Clinton was like, I support gay marriage now that it's 51% approval. It's like, cool. You just waited.
Right.
I don't know.
But it's like, it's not, I don't know. I won't even get into it anymore. It's just I understand people's fatigue with this kind of shit. And I understand both sides. I don't know why they had to say anything. And I don't think Sony authorized it. I just don't think Sony can do anything about it. And that's an important distinction. Well, and I thought it was especially weird that the European studios were tweeting. It's like, this has nothing to do with you, dude. And in fact, the 14-week law that was that was thrown to the Supreme Court is way looser than a lot of European laws. So I just feel like it's a lot of nonsense, personally. But I'm personally pro-choice, if it matters to you. But I believe in the old mantra. Remember the old mantra? You guys might be a little too young. Safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. That would be nice. Everyone gets what they need.
I think you should be able to abort up to 15 years old.
I mean, that would
just in case you start seeing like, mommy, look, I drew Sonic, and you could restart.
Right. Be like, well, we're gonna have to snuff you out now. Yeet. All right, my friends, let's get the hell out of here. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
No way, man.
Fair enough. Dustin, do you have any closing comments?
I have two. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who came out to our meetup at Too Many Games. It was a fantastic time. The second thing is that I mentioned, this has been bothering. It's been in the back of my mind. I mentioned about Ben correcting about Lancaster versus Lancaster. I said I didn't care. And I want to be clear. When Ben does that, he was looking out. I think it was mentioned months ago or something. He's looking out because if you say it wrong when you're in that place, you're going to look like a fucking idiot.
Totally.
Yeah. So, he's looking out when people correct you, hopefully it's in your best.
Yeah. When they try to tell you that it's not called Silicon Valley, which it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
source, I lived there.
Right. Exactly.
It's a pretty good one.
Exactly. So yeah.
All right, my friend.
Ben was looking out for me. That's all I'm saying.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ben. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and all things Last Stand Media. Could not do it without you on Patreon and elsewhere. Leave us nice reviews on iTunes if you're over there. You can follow us on YouTube. Leave us comments there. Whatever you want to do. However it's best for you. Do what feels good. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.